Greetings and salutations, everyone, and welcome back to an ArchCast special, where today's subject will be gatekeeping. It's what it is, exactly, it's theories, it's philosophy, and I've got two guests with me today, Danny Fortuna from Heresy Posting and Counterpoints 40k.
Good evening.
Heresy Posting represents.
Welcome, welcome, gentlemen.
Yeah, no, very, very happy to be here. If I could just do a little intro for me. My name's Connor. I run a YouTube channel named Counterpoints 40k. I do some political debate stuff. I've been involved in the Twitch and YouTube political sphere. But 40k ended up being the more popular content that I produced. So the main thing that I'm kind of known for is taking existing fan animations and Warhammer TV animations, chopping out 20 to 30% of it, filling it up with lore, and then people seem to like my breakdowns if they're either veterans of the hobby who want to talk about the lore, or if they're brand new people who have no idea what's going on. And that's kind of my claim to fame.
Well, an introduction follows another. Hello guys, I'm Danny Fortuna. I am actually an Italian gatekeeper fan of Warhammer 40k. I am the admin and creator of one of the most infamous 40k community around, at least on Facebook, called Warhammer 40k Heresy Posting, a group made by gatekeepers for gatekeepers. And we are renowned for butting heads with the entire side of Warhammer, even participating in the Templin Institute war when he decided that for a lore channel, bringing up that lore doesn't matter was a good idea for some reason. And yeah, here we are pretty much. Not a YouTuber yet, but I'm a good gatekeeper and I love 40k for the last 5 years, where it has been my bread and butter. And at this point, I just breathe and live lore. So
There we are. I've been struggling to get the chat running, but Streamlabs does not wish to cooperate today, so it might be a chatless stream.
Well, that's okay. And I mean, if you want me to just kind of kick it away, one of the things that so you and I met when Radham, who is somebody who I met through the Twitch and YouTube political sphere, they kind of said, "Hey, I'm talking to Arch about, Warhammer and gatekeeping and all that kind of stuff. Would you mind moderating?" I said, "Absolutely, I would love to." Arch's reputation precedes him, and I'm kind of I don't know if you identify as a chuddy guy, but I'm a part of Chudhammer, I would like to think. And so, I was like, yeah, absolutely. So I like to think that I kind of kept myself out of the debate as much as physically possible. But at the same time, I liked that you led with gatekeeping. Like, I physically cannot stop you from printing female Marines and, making them trans or gay or pan or whatever lore you have in your headcanon. However, I can push back against this like cultural momentum of trying to make everything progressive. And as a matter of fact, I think it's morally imperative for us to do so, considering how many IPs have effectively been, in my estimation, ruined by progressive ideology without a narrative backbone.
Very much so.
The problem with
Gatekeeping has
political
proven itself to be
ideology,
very important.
when applied in the correct manner, yeah, it is really a matter of perspective. But in the end, I found, at least with years and years put into gatekeeping 40k, that the main problem is
I have lost.
Everybody, in a way, is a gatekeeper. What changes is what they are gatekeeping against. There is people like us that don't want to gatekeep people from enjoying the hobby their own way, as long as it stays their own way. And then there are people that pretty much want to gatekeep anybody that doesn't even agree with them on ideological matters. I've had people come at me and even insult me for saying the Imperium are the good guys, because I can see that from an outside perspective, applying our own morals, they are not the good guys, because nobody in 40k is the good guy. But when you apply it from an inside moral of 40k, the Imperium, the humanity trying to survive and kill everything that wants to kill them, are the good guys. And yet people that were against gatekeeping tried to gatekeep me for that opinion by accusing me of being a fascist, or being a person that likes fascist, or a Nazi, or whatever other buzzword without a meaning they can try to throw around just to show that they are completely ignorant of what those things are.
Yeah, the interesting thing for me though is that I don't know about you guys, but I feel like in the past few years, maybe 2 or 3, I would say from like 2016 to 2020 with the I don't know how involved in the YouTube online political sphere you guys are, but I felt like there was a surge of lefty creators who were doing why I left the left, or why you should be progressive, or why you should be socialist, or why you should be communist. And by that I mean Vosh, I mean, Hassan Piker, I mean, Destiny to a certain degree, if you guys are familiar with those streamers and YouTubers. So it seemed like everything was moving left, and it seemed like the right wing was catching community strikes guidelines. They were getting taken down by social media, et cetera, et cetera. But it does seem that with Elon Musk buying Twitter, the Overton window opened back up. And so as a result of that, I have felt more freedom online to just say, oh, you think I'm racist? Go fuck yourself. You think I'm fascist? Go fuck yourself. And even then, like, it's kind of like water off of a duck's ass, because who cares at this point? They've overused the terms to the point that they don't have any meaning.
But they have overused it even to the point that they don't understand what that is. Like, everybody that is accused of being a fascist most of the time is simply a person they don't agree with. The people that are against gatekeeping are not complaining that there are gatekeepers, are complaining that they are not the gatekeepers, even if they try very much to be the gatekeepers. It is pretty much the entire reason on Facebook that heresy posting was born. This is a bit of a backstory on what happened like in 2019, not even, but there was a group called Gatekeepers Never Stop Painting. It was the last gatekeeping group left on Facebook, the last one. After a bit of harassment of the admin, he decided to change the name and drop the gatekeeping part, and pretty much fell to the woke mob. I was already banned from like all the major groups of 40k and even some minor ones, so I decided to take on the mantle, and I created Warhammer 40k heresy posting by gatekeepers for gatekeepers. And from then, gatekeeping on Facebook and 40k especially has seen a resurgence that is notable with even some of the major groups, including me in their moderation teams, just to keep things fair. Because I never banned people from the group or community, or even tried to gatekeep people for what they believe in or for what they do in their day-to-day life. I just try to keep the lore true to itself, all the while keeping on having fun. Some other people simply don't want to have fun. They see 40k as a way to apply political ideology to people, a way to spread political ideology to people, when they don't realize that for how 40k is structured, real life is poison for it. The moment real life enters the equation, 40k dies.
See, this is actually something that I kind of disagree with the gatekeepers about. Like, I don't know if we're having a free-flowing discussion or a debate or whatever, but you tell me where we go. But basically, I do enjoy seeing the real life parallels into 40k. So, for instance, a video that I made that isn't crazy popular, but I still think is interesting, is that I did, Gene Stealer cult are communists, and then I went into how Marxist Leninists and vanguard communists of the early 20th century, they get into position of power, they subvert, they use sex and money and influence and all that kind of stuff to climb into the upper echelons of power. And then because they believe that they have to, usher in the utopia, they overthrow the government, destroy it, and then take over in one fell swoop. And that's how the revolutions of the early 20th century felt. And I think that the creators, like, if you look at some of the art online, some of the propaganda around Gene Stealer cults is very much like early 20th century proletariat uprising communist propaganda. And so I think that those parallels can make it more interesting. What I think that I want to avoid is, progressives trying to make every faction progressive. Like, I don't want female space marines the same way I don't want female orcs. There doesn't have to be female everything. You just need to have enough ideological and existential diversity to make the plot and narrative and themes interesting.
Listen, you take that back on the female orcs. I need muscle mommies. No.
Well, yeah, but see, you open up that door on the muscle mommy thing, and then before you know it, everybody's asking for female everything. So,
Yeah.
and for me, it's just real quick. The thing that is interesting to me about 40k is the thematic. Like, I don't take 40k as a literal one-to-one representation of life, but I do think that there are psychological and thematic and mythological stories that ring true because 40k borrows so much from real-world psychology and mythology.
That is true. In fact, like we can see it even in some elements, like the Ultramarines that are clearly inspired by the Roman Empire. The
Yep.
Blood Angels are clearly inspired by the Greek empires. Then you have like the first Emperor Champion that had not it was that had Imperator Rex written on it. I don't remember what it is a citation, but I remember there is a citation. Then there is
Yeah.
Nathaniel Garro that is believed to be carrying actually Excalibur because it is believed to be Excalibur from the details given on it. But what you're saying pretty much is that 40k has real life undertones. And it is a thing that everything has because we are human, we create with what we know, and what we know is the thing we have around that is humanity. That means that those
Mhm.
undertones are present, but it doesn't mean they are hitting you over the head with an hammer.
I have
It is a thing you
lost.
can see like from a very successful franchise like it is Lord of the Rings. In Lord of the Rings, there is a very much discussion about racism between elves and dwarves. And the story, in
Mhm.
fact, starts with the fellowship that has a dwarf and an elf that hate each other and are always in competition with each other. And yet, the scene everybody remembers the most is the final one, where when Gimli just goes, "I never thought I would die side by side with an elf," and Legolas just goes, "What about side by side with a friend?" I could do that. It is a scene that
Mhm.
shows the evolution of the character and shows that in the end, in for a great purpose like defeating evil and such, we can put aside our differences. But if it was from the beginning like dwarves lives matter, that wouldn't have worked at all.
Well, and yeah, that's actually really funny that you mentioned Lord of the Rings and gatekeeping IPs. You know, part of the thing is like progressives, at least the ones that I talk to about pop media, they won't concede that there's any kind of faults with the new intellectual properties when it comes to Marvel or when it comes to Lord of the Rings or whatever. But there's also like I've noticed a lot of people just reporting that they feel like the new intellectual properties are hollow, and it's because they don't hit into any of the rich thematic depth that the original Lord of the Rings did. And, you know, God help me, I'll defend Marvel a little bit. I actually think there is thematic depth to, you know, the Iron Man through Infinity War series, which is part of what makes it so appealing. Now, it might be adolescent. It might be more for 13-year-old boys than it is for 35-year-old men. But I still think I still think that by looking at a principle like Captain America representing principle, or Tony Stark representing ego, or Doctor Strange representing knowledge, or something like that, and then seeing how those virtues interact with challenge, I think that's worthy of like exploration and contemplation. Whereas maybe just like somebody talking to Hulk's face and being like, "You don't understand what it's like to be, you know, a woman," like that's fucking cringe and should die and be thrown into the waste bin of history.
Well, this comes with the idea of storytelling, right? Because
Mm.
storytelling is actually relatively simple when you really begin breaking it down. And it usually has to do with presenting some form of real life. This is why when the communists say that everything is political, what they're really saying is everything has elements of real life. Because, as you mentioned, 40k has allegories to real life. Roman Empire, like Fortuna mentioned, etc. And this is in part because we humans are actually not very creative beings. This is why we've recycled the same fucking story since the goddamn Iliad.
Right.
But this is also the stories that are good. Like, cliches are cliches for a reason. It's because they are good. However, identity, which is the key story of the current day progressivism, is not really a story. There was a guy is not a story. It's not a journey. It's not an evolution. It's not a standpoint. It's just, well, there's a dude over there, and I guess he's black. Okay. Why?
Well, and that's yeah, and that's the most my biggest frustration with self-insert narratives. So for instance, let's just use Captain Marvel as an example because, you know, it's large, it's pop culture, lots of people know it. So when
It is
you
hitting a bit low on the belt because it is interpreted by an actress that has the range of acting between chair and plank of wood. So
listen, all right, that, you know, but let's admit that Brie Larson in
I
Scott
have
Pilgrim
lost.
Saves the World, when she's a rock star or whatever, let's admit that she's hot there when she was, you know, 20 or 21 or whatever. Anyways, but Brie Larson, range aside, So when you look at the development of the characters like Iron Man, or if you look at the development of the character like Captain America or something like that, they're going through a journey in which they believe that they hold certain principles or values. Those principles or values come under attack. They have real questioning moments about whether or not they're going to hold true to what they believe in, and then they either have to allow some of their principles to dissolve because they no longer serve them the right way, or they have to double or triple down on their principle in spite of the fact that they're suffering because of it. Whereas if you look at Captain Marvel, it's she has amnesia, she has superpowers, she gets a little bit of her memory back, she decides to do the right thing, she beats up everybody in the room. And for me, that's not an arc. Like that doesn't show any kind of challenge or depth or thematic interest or anything mentally or morally challenging at all. And as a result, like if you want to see people fly around a screen and beat people up, maybe that it's good for that, but it's not good for any kind of depth or relatability.
Captain Marvel represents nothing.
Yeah. Whereas Tony Stark represents ego, and Captain America represents principle, and I could go on, but I want to let you guys talk too.
I don't think it is not even a matter of Captain Marvel represents nothing. The problem is that Captain Marvel's story represents nothing. It is not a story of coming of character. It's not a story of growing. Like if we take even the first movie of Thor, it was Thor being extremely arrogant until his powers were taken away from him and he was cast on Earth. He learned to be humble, to care about others more than himself. So his powers went back and he could start fighting for the good of the people again. With Captain Marvel, it was just, I was always powerful, I had amnesia, the thing keeping me down as a super-powered woman was patriarchy.
Yeah.
It doesn't really make sense on a storytelling point. It doesn't really make sense on a story level point, because it is something that shouldn't really influence the story that much. Like maybe patriarchy can be an element of it, maybe amnesia can be an element of it, but the fact that many people critiqued about the first movie of Captain Marvel was that the character Brie Larson played was an asshole from the beginning to the end. She was an asshole. She was born a superpowered asshole. She ended the movie as a superpowered asshole. It was just that.
Thing is, though, this actually makes perfect sense within progressivism. There's a wonderful.
They're morally lucky.
There's a recent example of this too, which I was unlucky enough to get an early look at, and that is the first of the new Old World books, which is titled Lord of the Lance. Has any of you heard of or seen it, or even, God help you, read it?
No.
All right, so the Lord of the Lance is about Bretonnia, right? I'll put the little cover in there so you can have a look at it. And you think, okay, it's going to be a story about knights doing knightly stuff. All right, fair enough. A good way to relaunch the old world, a classic's tale of chivalry, right? No. It should be called Ladies of the Lance, because the majority of the characters are female knights now. Pegasus knights, furthermore. And the first character that is introduced is a female knight, right? And in the prologue of the story, she lectures her dad, the Duke, on how to run a castle, how to treat his peasants. She instantaneously beats the shit out of 24 undead tomb warriors that arise from a boat. She defeats them single-handedly, easily, while saving a useless man in so doing. Then, after having dispatched all of the undead, she vows to go save her brother, who was worthlessly defeated by the Tomb Kings and is now being held as a hostage in Araby. She has no personality beyond being the perfect character. Like, she is the Gary Stu, but female.
So can I... This is actually really interesting to me because I hadn't watched the original Alien or Aliens since I was a kid, and I started watching it recently. I watched them again probably 2 or 3 times each, and what I really like about good storytelling as opposed to other storytelling. So a lot of people would instantaneously, just because you don't like the story, they'd be like, a lot of the progressives, Wokehammer or whatever, they would be like, you just don't like it because it's a woman. And then they would bring up like 3 or 4 examples of men who were Gary Stews. But if you actually look at Sigourney Weaver's character in Alien and Aliens, she's hunted by a presence that is infinitely more powerful than her. Despite being smart, she loses all of her crew. She barely survives with her, pet at the very, very end, and it's through sacrifice and trying to confront her own fear and all that kind of stuff. That's the first movie. And then the second movie, she effectively has PTSD. She's like anxiety ridden. She doesn't want to go anywhere. She doesn't want to do anything. She's being burned for what she did in the previous movie. She is suffering. She is getting her ass kicked by the world and life, even though she's trying to do her best and she's an intelligent character. And then when she goes with like the Marines and all that kind of stuff, she's not single-handedly thwarting every single thing that's happening. She's almost dying dozens of times, and there's basically there's internal and external conflicts of characters that are around her. That is interesting because the character is suffering and being challenged. What is not interesting is hearing Superwoman is able to do everything right all the fucking time.
Yes. But this is also unavoidable, because the moment you introduce any weakness in a progressive character... Oh, kind of, yes. But the moment you introduce any weakness into a progressive character, that becomes a point of attack. That becomes then a moment of, oh no, she's not actually our hero after all. And this can be seen throughout progressive media, but most recently, in an example, I'll put this in the link structure. So, I don't know if either of you is homosexual enough to have watched Has Been Hotel like I have.
I am bisexual, so yes.
There you go.
Okay, I'm not homosexual enough, but I am seeing the memes pop up about the basically the story arc.
Yes, like the story arc is batshit insane, but what I find quite interesting is there's one scene where they're making a raunchy joke, because there's a dude and he wants to get a relationship with a woman, but he's too cowardly to do so. And so the joke is, he's like, can I buy you a drink? Because I'm buying everyone a drink. Like, could we have sex? Because I'm having sex with everyone. He gets dragged away and he gets bang-fucked by an entire bar. Okay? Raunchy joke.
Jesus.
And the progressives look at this and go like, oh, the character has show weakness now, so how can I make this about me? Because now I can spin this. And so it becomes, rape funny. Like, no, rape not funny. That's not the point of the joke.
Well, is it because he has anxiety?
Isn't it like, doesn't it take place in hell?
Yes.
What do they expect happens in hell?
Well, hell is not a very hellish place, but this is the psychology of the progressive. Because if Bria Larson had something bad happen to her, like say that she had a traumatic experience, then people within progressivism would go like, okay, this is about my thing now. So I have Lego-citis. I was raped by a Lego brick as a 12-year-old, and therefore, I now have a point here. You can see this repeatedly. Like, this is the Barbie meme, right? I'm sure many of you have seen... this one too. Like, this is Barbie. It's a massive pile of victimization, and then He-Man. Like, yes, no, this is entirely normal, actually. Both
I think it's not the artwork of the new series, because I would have cried in that case.
Well, hold on. So that's actually interesting that you're bringing that up. Did you guys watch the new Barbie film?
I did. It was a wonderful men's right flick. Quite enjoyed it.
I thought so too. Like, I thought it was fantastic.
What I took away from it was the Barbie preferred to live under a patriarchy-created man-made world than in an enormous female-made world from the end of it.
Yeah, so obviously you can shitpost about it where the patriarchal scenes or whatever, it seems like everything's working and everybody's happy. And also there's a really sympathetic narrative with the Kens where a lot so my wife was laughing because we watched it together. She was laughing at the scene where Ryan Gosling plays I Want to Push You Around by Matchbox 20 for 4 hours, like at Barbie. But also they were talking about like MMA and they were talking about this movie and they were talking about The Godfather and all that kind of stuff. But like, to me, that wasn't like Ken's being annoying and mansplaining things. That was the Kens earnestly trying to share their deep felt passions with a woman so they could have some level of connection. And so what is shared for a laugh of like, oh, men are so stupid, et cetera, I saw as like earnest and genuine and kind of like humble and cute and endearing. And so if you read it in a certain way, it's actually like a really pro-man film. It's almost a patriarchy film. It's fantastic.
Well, in the end, the patriarchy won. Ryan Gosling got the nomination for the Oscars.
I love that so much. Oh, there's something that I've tweeted. So if you guys want to see Warhammer 40K and political shit posts, you can follow me at Counter Connor. So Counter common spelling CONOR. But I literally keep posting that because there was like a feminist magazine posted this tweet where they were like, Barbie is the sad realization that, Ken can dominate through patriarchy and that women can never win. And they were talking about the nominations. And so I actually just blurred out the women can never win part. And it's like, Barbie is a fantastic representation of the power of patriarchy. I just keep posting that over and over and over again. Just to fuck with people.
Pretty much. Because Barbie does a wonderful job of demonstrating the weakness of progressive storytelling. Because if you have a character that must be at all times all-powerful, then everyone around them actually ends up the victims of this power. Because Ken has no powers. The Kens don't have property rights. They don't have ownership of anything. The Kens sleep on the fucking beach. And no matter how you try to twist and turn the Barbie movie, that is what it is. The Kens are the oppressed class in this universe. And even when they get into power, do they abuse the women? No, they bring them into their houses. They treat them better than they did them. And the women only get power back by mentally abusing Ken.
I think Greta Gerwig and the writers, they kind of like lost track of it, where they were like, okay, hold on, we got to get it back so the Barbies have power again.
Oh no, like that's the thing. What they meant it at was a parody. They meant it at this is how bad women have it. That's their commentary on how the Barbies are in power. The way the Kens are is how the women's behave. Like that's what they think. But of course, in reality, that's not the case. Women have never been made to sleep on the beaches because of patriarchy.
And I'm okay with the complexity of the story for women or whatever, where like they feel like they have all these expectations thrust upon themselves, like both self-imposed and externally based and all that kind of crap. I'm okay with them like complaining about that, but I also think that it's interesting that by the end of it, that the choice is, do you go into this plastic, stereotypical, ideal world, which is matriarchal, by the end of it, or do you live in the real world in which there's struggle, but there's also like incredible depth and suffering and all that kind of stuff? And ultimately, Barbie as a protagonist picks the real world where there's depth and suffering. And that's the kind of thing. I think Greta Gerwig went to Catholic school, and if I remember correctly, she studied like theology and mythology and all that kind of stuff. So there's all sorts of like interesting themes, like apotheosis, like becoming like a god or becoming a god. There's all sorts of interesting little nods to theology and mythology throughout that I think goes wildly underappreciated.
To steal this discourse for a second and bring it back a bit away from Barbie and a bit more on 40K, because that is my area of expertise in the end. I think the problems with progressive writing that you guys have evidenced have actually taken place in 40K, but like in every other place where they have tried to take place, by the end of it, they kind of returned back to make actually the character that was being written as progressive probably the worst one of them all, because there is two specific examples, one that worked, one that didn't work. Have you guys ever read the Warhammer horror novel The King of Pigs?
I have not.
Me neither.
You, Arch? Okay. The King of Pigs pretty much is the story of a family of an hive where the main characters work like at a butchery of animals, mutated animals, and there is a war against chaos on the planet taking place, but as usual, propaganda tries to keep everything calm, at least in the cities, where the main character pretty much finds a pig, starts having hallucinations, starts seeing the gardens of Nargol. I will not spoil the end, but the novel doesn't end well. It's a Warhammer horror novel. But in general, the story is this character trying to do everything he can at the end for love, to try and see his own dead daughter again, that daughter that he had adopted with his own husband. The main character is a gay man of this novel. Now, the story works because that is just an element of the character, is an element that is brought up just once to establish world building, and then really doesn't take position in anything in the story. It is a story of a man going crazy, and in the end falling to the worship of Nargol. I will not explain how, I will not spoil the ending, but it is a Warhammer horror novel, so that is what you expect. And this works because it is an element of the character, but it is just an element written to give a world building and a sense to the character, but it doesn't really influence anything more. It is a very great read, and I suggest reading it. The other side, instead, I'm sure you guys will laugh when I bring it up, is Erda, the mother of the Primarchs. The problem with her is that she was written to be compassionate, she was written to be the superior woman, the one that didn't want the Emperor to use her own sons as warlords to bring war to the galaxy. So her best idea to avoid it was to send them in the warp, get 2 of them lost forever, the rest damned, and then cause the entire Horus heresy because she couldn't accept that the men maybe had a fucking point in making superhuman generals. And the only thing that she actually, just to finish this discourse, the only thing that she did actually well in the end was, and you will not believe it, redeem Erebus, because Erebus is the one that kills her. So I have to respect him for it. It is the only thing I can respect of him.
Well, here's the thing though. So I actually really love I actually really love that they make her like a crazy fucking woman who, just threw her kids out into the warp in order to save them from her domineering father or whatever. But that's because I'm sexist and I think that women are fucking crazy. So for me, actually, hey, that kind of makes sense. Like the Emperor of Mankind. I know he didn't like marry Erda, but still, he worked with Erda. They're both phenomenal scientists. She's great. They can talk about everything for hours. She's the perfect mother to the Primarchs on a genetic level, et cetera, et cetera. And then she's crazy fucking enough that she thinks that being a weapon on behalf of humanity is worse than playing Russian roulette with their lives by throwing them out into the warp. And no offense to, the entire gender or sex of women, but that does seem like some wild shit that they would do. So I'm actually okay with it as a plot point.
I don't remember the citation, but there was a movie where an actor was interpreting a writer, and he was asked, how do you write women so well? And he answered, I think of a man, then I take away reason and accountability.
Well, and that's the thing too. So a lot of people, when we talk about like themes or whatever, that's like the main thing that I'm looking for with any kind of character. So I'm more liberal than a decent amount of like Chud Hammer or the Christian nationalists or the dissident right folks or whatever, who basically think that all of this is subversive propaganda. Like if you have any kind of interesting gay character, interesting black character, interesting whatever character, but I don't really give a shit, because for me, it's like we should unite as a species in order to dominate this planet and then spread out into the species, or spread the species to the galaxy. And I don't just mean in Warhammer, I mean in the real world. We should like acknowledge our differences, but unite as a species and spread out into the galaxy.
That unfortunately requires a common goal, though. It's a thing we don't have.
True, which is why I'm kind of waiting for the collapse, and then maybe after the collapse we can get our shit together. But the point is that, like, for instance, like the Nurgle character being like a gay dad or whatever who loses his daughter, but then he damns a planet by going into, trying to save his daughter through Nurgle or some shit. That's like, I would read that story and I wouldn't give a shit. As long as there isn't like graphic homosexual sex scenes in it, I wouldn't give a fuck. But I do find that I think our frustration, or my frustration with popular media and advertising, is that like they want you to be uncomfortable. They tell you that, and then they kind of like force you to be. So for instance, like at 4 p.m. on an afternoon where I'm watching like Netflix with my kid or whatever, and then we see 2 gay dudes in luchador masks wrestling in a fucking bed. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, why does it have to be like graphic and explicit like that? I don't care about the Buzz Lightyear kiss on the cheek in the fucking Disney film, but don't show my fucking son 2 luchadores banging each other at 4 p.m. What the fuck is wrong with you?
Well, this has to do with the introduction of it, right? Because if you just have a character who happens to be gay, nobody seems to have a problem with that. But the progressives will just say that that's just window dressing. You're using my identity as window dressing or as a shield, right? Because I don't know if either of you have seen the series Generation Kill from like 2003.
Yes.
No.
It's a very good show.
Kill.
There's a gay dude in it, and he is blatantly gay. Like, he is full homo, right? And it's
Wait, are you talking about Fruity Rudy?
Yes, Fruity Rudy.
I don't know if Fruity Rudy is actually homosexual in real life, but
Fruity
I'll let
Rudy
you continue.
Is
Fruity Rudy is homosexual?
Definitely gay in the show, at least.
Okay, sorry, continue.
And it's played like a joke in many ways. He's just one of the characters. Like, he embraces it, he plays it off as a joke, everybody accepts it. And this was the 2000s. Like, yeah, the funny gay guy. But that isn't good enough for progressivism, because now again you're introducing weakness. Like, oh, he's playing off his gayness as a joke. Oh, that's not good enough, you know. It has to be super serious. And none of this is conducive to good storytelling, because you're not actually telling a story in-universe now. You're telling a story about yourself and your identity in the 21st century. See, this is what I object to at the end of the day. I don't care. Even if you could make a good progressive story, all right, go ahead. But seeing as the vast majority of progressive stories are about themselves rather than the story they're telling, there is almost no way to do this. And certainly not in fandom. You cannot make a good progressive story in 40k because 40k is not a very progressive setting.
Well, and why not create something progressive in and of itself instead of constantly walking around to existing IPs and then skinning them alive and then just like putting them at window. You're worried about window dressing for your identity where there's just like some casual mention of a demographic, like an immutable characteristic that is involved in the story or whatever. Well, how about the fucking window dressing of you turn something into a 90-minute exposition about how your mere existence is problematic for the rest of the world and how they need to get over it, and instead of telling me a good story, but then you're skinning the thematic depth of a world that was already built before you to almost nothing. Like that's what frustrates me, is like, if you kept the thematic depth, I wouldn't give a fuck, but since you throw that right out the window in order to tell a stupid story, it's frustrating. And I do have a specific example, but I do want to give you guys the opportunity to talk.
I think it is a very easy question to answer. They simply lack the capabilities to create anything good with their own ideology, because simply their ideology isn't good. It doesn't let you have room for growth, room for change. Somebody that they like cannot ever be a bad guy, cannot ever be somebody that has flaws, because flaws inherently show weakness and such. It is the same thing Arch said. But I think the main problem with what they do is that it's not that it doesn't have a place in the setting, it's that it doesn't really fit with what they do. Like, one of the main complaints I've seen, like, I don't know if you guys have watched the series of The Last of Us, not the games.
I saw the first season.
Okay, the second episode, the one going around the friend of Joel, what was his name again?
Because I don't remember, but if you're talking about the prepper couple that lived in the
gay couple, yeah. The problem is, you look at the series and you think, oh yeah, maybe this was in the game. You go in the game and nothing of the likes ever happened. The main character, like that episode, you watch that episode as a standalone. Does it scream zombie series to you? Because you have to understand what you are looking. It doesn't scream zombie series, so it doesn't fit in the universe. In fact, if you go in the game, you find this guy that is a survivor, has filled a city full of traps, and you go to him to ask for a favor to give you a car and such. You fight with him for a bit, you fight zombies with him, and then you find what he calls his partner that hanged himself in house because he was bitten. That is the end of the implication of the gay romance of this character.
And that is a zombie story.
Yeah, a man that finds what he calls his partner, might have been his lover, might not have been his lover, nobody ever confirmed it, and he hung himself because he was bitten and didn't want to turn. That is the best way you can interact with something like this and keep it thematic. He is gay, he's a survivor though. That is the first thing. Is because that is why the second game doesn't work. Because the second game is, oh yeah, the world is at an ending, there is no food, the winter kills people, there is more zombies than people, there are groups of raiders and such, and then there is a cult that kills gay people. Why? How does it form? Where
Who
did
the fuck thinks that come from?
Like, where does a cult that kills gay people form in a post-apocalyptic world when your main focus is not getting beaten and finding food?
I love the idea that it's somewhere in Middle America, there's somebody who goes like, why are there zombies? And it goes like, it's the gays. That's kind of great, though.
But see, that's the thing. I wouldn't want them to mention it. I would want them to like quintuple down on it, where they're like, you know, they were like really big Bible thumpers before the apocalypse. The apocalypse happened. They remembered specific passages about the way people conduct themselves. They associate disease with homosexuality, and as a result, they become really, really hostile to homosexual people. And as a result, they form a cult around, basically purging homosexuality because they view them as the root cause of the pandemic or whatever, because it's God's wrath for humanity or something like that.
That would be the smart way to do it.
Yeah, if you quintupled down on the story and you made it deep and rich and weird and interesting and called it back to real world events, then that could be cool. But if you're just going to say, oh yeah, they just hate gay people, like that's not a story. That's not interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the extent of motivation we are given. They hate gay people. They want to kill gay people in a zombie world where there is more zombies than humans. I'm
that's fucking crazy.
Okay, maybe they cannot make children and you can hate them for that. Like, oh yeah, you are not helping the species.
Oh, you're a waste of resources or something like that.
Or some bullshit like that. But no, the extent of the story is they hate gay people, hate them because they're homophobic. That is the end. It is as deep as a fucking puddle. It is not something that works.
Well, and going on with like just to give specific examples, because I know that leftoids sometimes they'll be like, oh, you bring up all these things, but I don't think these things are happening. What's your examples for it? So my example of like a 90-minute film that is purely about identity, and I would view it as a progressive story, is a 2015 film called Dope. And it's basically about like a black nerd in LA. He lives in the violent side of town. He idealizes 80s and 90s culture. He's not like a bad kid himself, but he ends up getting mixed up with some bad kids. He ends up carrying like a shitload of drugs for one of his gangster associates. And then as a result of that, he gets into like a lot of trouble, gets hunted by the cops, gets hunted by violent gangsters, et cetera, et cetera. And then at the end of it, he's applying for Harvard, and you're listening to his essay about Harvard, and he's like, if I was white, would you even ask me that question? And it's like, yeah, I would ask you that question. Like, just because you're like a black kid from fucking South Central who had a rough life and a rough 48 hours doesn't mean that white kids just apply to Harvard and they don't have to fucking get in on some level of like, one, meritocratic basis, or two, like personality and life challenges and all that kind of shit. And so what bugs me about that film, while I do think it has like redeeming elements, is like the level of entitlement where they think that if you just like switch the amount of melanin in your skin, life is on autopilot. It's literally just your identity that's holding you back from having a blissful fucking existence. And that is like the most retarded propaganda that I feel like has been subconsciously emphasized to young people for the past decade that pisses me off to no end.
Well,
yeah, to put it simply, yeah.
There's a couple of interesting little threads here, because I'm going to roll this all the way back to the beginning of this tangent again. The reason why they move into our hobbies is power. Like, that's the political reality of it. It's Marcuse's repressive tolerance, right? That is the idea of the ideology at large. Because they can create their own stories, but these stories usually only come in two flavors. Either extreme victimization, as Dope sounds like, and like, oh my god, if only I was the oppressor class, everything would be better. Or The Handmaid's Tale, where you create the most sadistic world you can imagine to hurt your own feelings, and then be like, man, I do have a terrible life. And then
I have lost.
Yo, this gets into the Empire in Star Wars too, where in one hand, especially with the older series, it's good to have Saturday morning cartoon villains who just do bad shit to do bad shit. That way you can thematically play off of the Jungian stereotypes and archetypes against like those themes. But the reason why Andor, if you haven't seen it, it's allegedly an excellent series, but it's by the same creators as Rogue One. Rogue One operates in a moral gray, but it shows everybody's motivations for why they're doing what they're doing. So you understand why the Saturday morning cartoon villains are the way they are, because they have interesting motivations. And that is like so much cooler storytelling than, again, like you said, with Handmaid's Tale, where they're evil because they're evil.
Yes. You create a self-masturbatory fantasy where you get to be the ultimate victim. And the other version of progressive storytelling is exactly that, actually. Yes, the power fantasy. That's the other version. This is why they flock to Daenerys, for example. It's like, Daenerys, savior of the brown people. And you so often see this as well from progressive
Look
people
how that
on
worked
Twitter.
out.
Where they go like, if I was in Nazi Germany, I'd be the person who didn't Sieg Heil. No, you would be the sheep. You would be standing there in the flock shouting your little lungs out at Hitler, just like everybody goddamn else.
Well,
it is why I go against fan sitters, in fact, in 40k, because this ideology war that has been going for a bit still hasn't come full circle and made everybody either Warhammer or gatekeepers. There are still people that simply watch and whatever happens, happens. I will not say I hate them, but they're probably the version I despise the most, because simply whatever happens is a way to say you don't care about what happens. And whatever happens, that we, with the Gatekeeper, win and 40k stays true to itself, or the Warhammer wins and 40k gets a black disabled trans emperor as the new version in 30k, it simply denotes that you don't care what happens. And in the end, you will have to take a side. And if you take the side of whoever wins, can you really call the ideology that won yours? Because you didn't fight for it, you simply took part in it.
Well, I'm kind of resigned because I've seen all these cultural things just slowly get corrupted over time. You know, Indiana Jones is an old fat fart who can't keep up with the hot young lady. You know, and she's a alcoholic asshole who's rude to everybody, who can bang whoever she wants as well. You know, just I could go down the line, but I'm not going to because I don't want to bore you to death. But the point being that, like, I'm so used to everything being terrible all the time. Obviously, like, I want to fight for 40k to stay true to what makes 40k special, but I'm also resigned to the fact that 20 years from now, GW could literally, out of a misguided sense of equality, hire some random DEI asshole who's like, yeah, we're doing female space marines, and then they do it, and then I just have to fucking eat shit over it.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's the thing. Here's one of the big motivations for bringing in the neutral people. I don't know if either of you saw Catalyst Games Labs' announcement the other day.
I didn't.
I did, but I didn't read through it.
I'll put in the link channel there. So it's basically kind of like the "you will not be missed" post for Warhammer again.
Great.
And what struck me with this is, our gatekeeping is very simple. It is gatekeeping ideology, and it is gatekeeping that ideology for very clear reasons, in that it doesn't make good stories within our setting. We can observably see that it makes things worse, we can identify why, we can explain why. Their gatekeeping, which they engage in vociferously, is against individuals. It is, if you don't abide by our set of language rules, if you talk about these things but not limited to these things, we will ban you. It's not ban your ideology, it's not ban your ideas, it's not ban Nazis, it's ban you. And it's the company doing it. Whereas we simply go, no, we don't think this makes a good product, we're not interested in it. They go, hey company, we don't like those people. Please keep them out.
Yeah, that's absolutely cringe. And then that's part of the reason why I want to talk to as many people as possible, regardless of whatever the bullshit is that kind of like went on with them from somebody else's perspective, is because this has been going on for the past half decade to a decade, where they are just they're not addressing what you actually said. They're not addressing your actual concepts. They're throwing you into a basket of concepts that are bad, and then they're just kicking you out without a second thought. And that's kind of fuck that, you know?
Feel free to correct me, but isn't Catalyst the same production house that actually kicked out a woman that was one of the main creators behind their tabletop games under suggestion from a trans employee that they have hired that was actually accused, and there was proof of it, that this trans employee was harassing the woman in question until it got her fired?
I don't know if it's the story you're talking about, because it sounds like it has a lot of elements of what happened to Blaine Pardoe.
Yeah, it was her I was referring to. I didn't remember the name.
Yeah, Blaine Pardoe's a man.
It is a man.
Yes.
What?
Yes. So Blaine Pardoe was one of the most prolific writers for BattleTech. He'd written tons of books for them, he'd supported them through thick and thin, and he'd really gotten behind Catalyst. Catalyst threw him under the bus, fired him, publicly disassociated from him, still asked him to work for free afterwards, mind you. all over the word of a person who claimed to be a nurse, and this person claimed to be a woman. It was later revealed that it was not a woman, it was a man. She was not a nurse. Later on, they claimed to be trans, and after they got Blaine Pardue fired, they also released this man's, whatever the story is these days, work in an official anthology. So after she harassed him out of a job, Catalyst Games Lab decided to reward the person.
Yeah.
Yeah, as usual with progressive ideology, fascism is actually given a reward.
Yes. She proved to be the stronger fascist in this contest.
Well, and that's where, for me, kind of like, what are we actually doing? Obviously, we're talking shit about the things that we dislike in social trends that are coming about, but also I just think that we need to be prepared as a hobby fan community or whatever to preserve and enrich the stories that make our lives meaningful, and also to propagate them forward in ways that are cool and interesting. So, for instance, I think that GW would have to be insane in order to retcon female Marines into the Horus Heresy. I think that would be batshit fucking insane. I think that what's more likely is they'll do either like Primaris Sisters, where sisters just get enhanced, or they'll do female Space Marines, but they'll have Belisarius Call do it or something like that. But I think that the cool thing about 40K is the universe is so big, you can kind of create your own thing. And so you can say, we honor the old ways, so we only have male Space Marines or whatever. If you bring your female Space Marines, that's cool, we'll play, but that's not the way that we do it, or these are the themes that we want to preserve from the old stories, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think we need to be ready to do that, because the truth is that all our Gen X mentors and our boomer parents are failing us left, right, and center.
That is true, but remember that this is not a battle of what Games Workshop will decide to do. There is to remember, first and foremost, that Games Workshop is a company. Companies are made to make profit, to make money. It is actually why the gatekeeping movement with Arch, with me and other people, has actually risen in the case of 40K. Other than the fact that, getting to annoy the fans of the universe that has literally the saying, in the far future there is only war, and expecting anything else than the fans moving war to you is a bit dumb. But the main reason gatekeepers have risen like this is that the only reason why the progressives win is that nobody's shouting louder than them to make the companies understand that they do not speak for the majority of the hobby. It is the reason we are here. It is the reason why we should always be here and convince more people to join our side. This is not a battle you can fight alone. It is a battle of the community, because other communities have tried to ignore these people. They failed and their hobby died. Other people have tried to tell them gently to get fucked and fuck off. It didn't work. Their hobby died. Here we are on full-blown war. We are in a war of shouting the loudest to make Games Workshop understand that the minority that will be pleased by retconning that level of 30 plus years of lore is not worth losing the majority of your fans just to pander to them, because we are many, we are here, we shout louder to show you we are here this time.
Fire is the answer.
Based. The only thing that I think is worrisome to me, not about you or Arch or whatever, but just in general, is that like you said, I think if I remember correct, you're saying, you're bi. I don't know if Arch is actually gay or if he just thought that cartoon was gay.
I am bisexual, and that was
gay.
made an enemy exactly from the progressives. They created their own enemy in me, yes.
Well, right. So that's kind of my thing, is when there are chill trans people on the internet, believe it or not. There are chill bi people, chill gay people, chill black people, chill Hispanic people, chill whatever. There's cool versions of every kind of human that exists on the planet. And so I would want Chudhammer or the Gatekeepers or whatever to be unified, kind of like what you said, by the shared vision, the shared ideology of a continuing intellectual property that has been amazing in the past and we want to be amazing in the future. Therefore, we're going to engage with it and we're going to be loud about it, because this is why we think what's good. What I don't think is necessarily good, now I don't give a shit, you guys do what you want to do, but is when you're like, oh, you're like a gross trans person, screw you, you're a piece of shit, blah, 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 blah. I think that one, it can turn off the more center and moderate people that you're trying to get into the movement. And then two, uh, corporate stakeholders like GW might say that an easy way to eliminate the gatekeepers is simply by incorporating trans people or gay people or black people into the hobby as visibly representative. That way, the Chudhammer and gatekeepers, they get frustrated and they leave. So that's something to
That
guard against.
that is a fear that is justified with every movement. But the point is, and I think Arch can agree, because I've seen a lot of accusation thrown his way. Many have seen a lot of accusations thrown my way, but there have been scarce and made up proof or no proof at all in some cases of these accusations. But I doubt either me, either Arch, or
I
either
have lost.
other serious gatekeepers are against identity of single people, as long as that identity doesn't require me to walk on eggshells around you. I never cared, and I ever preached that no matter your political ideology, no matter what you think, no matter how you identify, no matter who you bring to bed, as long as he is, an adult, because if it is not an adult, then we have a problem. But
Adult
other
and
than that,
consensual.
yeah, adult and consensual. I don't give a single fuck about it. Are you here to enjoy 40k? Yes. Do you like 40k? Yes. Will you complain that there is problems in 40k related to politics? I don't give a single flying fuck about.
I have lost.
No. Then you are well accepted. I am bisexual, and I am the first one to gatekeep, because I got so fucking annoyed that I was being silenced only for wanting 40k to stay true to itself, that I decided to take things in my own hands. Usually I look with a bit more regard if I see a profile or such, or people making posts that are, trans or gay and such, not because I am discriminating against them, but because usually it is more common that these kind of people are from the side that gets offended by everything, and usually they become a problem pretty quick. So I give a bit more of an eye of regard. But once I see that they are cool, they are making fun of it, because my group is pretty much built upon everything is fair game. As long as it is not TOS violating, make memes about me, make memes about everything you want. As long as they are funny, and as long as it is not literally calling violence and such, everybody's fair game. Let's have all a laugh together. But the moment we cannot agree on that, the moment we cannot even agree to simply support each other in making memes or liking 40k, that is the moment you are not well accepted into my community. Left, right, center, gay, heterosexual, black, white, it doesn't matter. What unites gatekeepers?
Being a pussy.
Yeah, what unites gatekeepers is the love for 40k and wanting to preserve what makes 40k special and unique. It is what we do, it is what we will always do. And if anybody says otherwise, they are not gatekeepers, simply put.
Well, so let me ask you this then. I think I could go on like a 5-minute rant about what I think makes 40k special, but what do you think makes 40k special?
I think it varies from people to people. In my case, what makes it special for me is that 40k pretty much saved my life. I found out about it in 2019 when I was still a student in university. I was depressed as fuck and literally on the verge of jumping off a cliff in Minecraft just to avoid problems. And and I found 40k. I was always passionate about wars, passionate about empires that were real or made up. And I was so moved and was so interested in Warhammer 40k that I ended up learning English for it. Until 2019, I spoke only Italian. I didn't speak even a word of English. So I decided to learn English to learn 40k. And I learned in 6 months, watching Luetin, watching Arch, watching some other YouTubers. And what makes special Warhammer for me is that there is something for everybody. You want a powerful female character. There is Lotara Sunny, there is Lotara Sarrin, there is Coriel Zet, there is the mother of Gilliman that I don't remember the name of. Then there is Caliphone, the sister of Perturabo, that told the Lord of Iron to his face, "You are weak," and ended up getting her neck snapped for it, but she actually did. The mother of Gilliman told the Night Hunter in one of the novels, she told Kurz to go fuck himself because she believed that he had killed the Gilliman, as he said. And these are very powerful characters. You want a exemplary male models instead. You get Dante, you get Sanguinius, you get Corsaro Khan, you get Tushan, the chapter master at Captain of the First Company of the Salamanders, that punched in the face a Marine Malevolent because he dared to bomb a refugee camp during the Third War for Armageddon, or maybe the second, I don't remember, against the orcs. Then I don't know, you want gay characters, you have the story of King of Pigs, you want you can find anything if you look for it, and if you decide to go and dig deep enough, it has something that can like to everybody. The lore is so deep that it is fascinating to learn until you hit the wall where you know almost everything. Like me, at that point it can get a bit boring when you don't learn new stuff, and it can get repetitive in some cases. But you need to get into an hobby like 40k with the fascination of a child in a candy store. Wherever you look, there is interesting stuff to learn, and there is something you can like of everybody, and there is shapes and form of everything you want around. If you just go into 40k and you start noticing problems, change hobby. There are better things you can do with your time. There are less headaches you can give me as an admin of various groups or communities. So if you come into 40k, you either like it or not. It is not a thing that can grow on you. You are either into ultra violence and complete and total senseless war, or you are completely out of your waters getting into 40k.
Yeah, so if I could share my favorite part about it, my favorite part about it is raging against the dying of the light, and also people being finding out what your principles are and trying to remain principled in a totally fucked up world. So I think that you can look out into the modern world, you can look at terrorism or war or, injustice or brutality or whatever, and you can find, especially on, more dark websites, you can find 10,000 examples of things that are fucked up and horrible and actually make you doubt your faith in humanity. But when you go to the Warhammer 40k setting, they have it 10 times worse. Not only are there things that make you question the goodness of humanity, there are people who relish doing the worst things possible because they're doing it to worship dark gods. And so and there's a temptation from yourself because you can gain power through worshiping the dark gods. And so what's really interesting is seeing people who are trying to do their best, who are trying to do right in a fucked up and fallen world, and they fail so much of the time, and they die so much of the time, that feels really true to me on an emotional level to real life, where, like you said, you were depressed, you were anxious, things suck, the world's a fucked up place, all that kind of stuff. But the calling is to be a good person in spite of that fact. Or if you're chaos, to embrace how big of a piece of shit you are and become a massive piece of shit.
Yeah, it depends really from how ironclad the character is. If you go like and search for the people that have sacrificed the most for 40k just for the people, you have no other character to look at than my favorite character of 40k, that is Dante, the chapter master of the Blood
Yep.
Angel. The guy is more than 1,600 years old by this point. He spent more than 150 maybe yeah, he spent like 20, 30 years as a human maximum. The rest he spent as a marine, and he was in war for all of them. As he said himself, one of like he has seen every single side of the Imperium. He has been on the Million Worlds. He has been on one end of the galaxy and the other. But there is in his book Dante, written by Guy Haley, there is a passage that I especially took to heart to make understand people how human 40k can be, even if it is so far from our own ideologies and politics and such. And it is, if I remember right, in chapter 8, called Dante Unmasked and Unarmored, where he's just like consulting some parchments about past events. He's drinking blood wine, talking with his own serf. And at one point he goes, the Imperium is falling, we are fighting wars from thousands of years. I've been here for more than 1,000 years, and nothing has changed. We are here fighting war after war after war, and nothing ever changes. And the Imperium, if it goes on like this, it will fall, and I will fall with it. And then he goes into his own desires, and this space marine that has spent more than 1,000 years in war, that has killed countless enemies, won countless duels, and then during the devastation of Baal, the book after, he would pretty much one-man army kill a swarm lord of the Tyranids during the devastation of Baal. He was that powerful. Just goes, if I could have one wish granted, it would be to be made obsolete by peace. To see things like me, monsters like me, warriors like me, become useless, and the Imperium finally reach a level of peace, making all weapons obsolete and making me obsolete so I can finally rest, and all my brothers with me.
Yeah. No, that's one of the most interesting things too about the tragedy of the setting is when you learn things there's some things that I want to go through the entire Horus Heresy series. I was actually thinking about live streaming. I'm not full time yet. I'm about to break 60,000 subs, which I'm very excited about. The goal is obviously to break 100,000. That's probably where I'll start making enough money that I could consider going full time. But I was thinking about like listening to the audiobooks and doing paint streams and all that kind of stuff so I could learn everything. But the really interesting details that I heard about the Horus Heresy, so if I get this wrong, let me know, is that Malkador and the Emperor had already wargamed the heresy in their minds because they thought that at some point some of the Space Marines are going to go rogue. And not just that, but they did also plan for peace where some of the Space Marines, like the Ultramarines and maybe, the Imperial Fists and the ones that can acclimate to peace and to peacekeeping operations and all that kind of stuff, they can stay in the Imperium. But the ones who can't adjust to the new peace, probably the World Eaters and maybe the Iron Warriors or something like that, the ones that can't acclimate to peace, they would eventually be purged. And so thinking about that, being like a galaxy conquering weapon who will be rendered obsolete and then raging against your own obsolescence to the point that you turn traitor against the thing you were trying to build. That's like a phenomenally interesting concept. And I'm sure that's like a really deeply human concept as well, where if you go back to Rome, like, we've mentioned Rome a few times, I'm sure there were plenty of generals who fought vicious campaigns against the Germans and the Swedes and the Gauls and the Celts and all that kind of stuff. But when it was time for peace, they couldn't fucking handle it. And I find that deeply human.
Because it is
roll this a little bit back again to the topic of gatekeeping, rather than just the good things about 40K.
Sure. Well, yeah, but this is for me like what I'm trying to demonstrate is this is what we're trying to keep, right? Because I don't want to hear a fucking a 90-minute screed about a Slaneshi Emperor's Children Marine and how they're actually justified like raping and murdering Imperial citizens. That's not what I want to read. What I want to read is like the things that people are trying to build and the tragedy of their lives. And so yeah, so it might not be specifically gatekeeping, but I'm trying to show what we're trying to keep.
Mm-hmm. Firstly, the Marines malevolent did nothing wrong. And second, okay,
they might have done so.
On what it is gatekeeping is trying to do, because I am far more hardline on this. I wish to create a culture that vehemently rejects progressivism, just for the simple sake that it is progressivism. And that is because I have begun to understand the underpinnings of progressivism, and I do not believe this is a political idea that can exist alongside without entertainment. I want the trans flag on Space Marines to be viewed exactly the same as a swastika. And that is not because I think trans people are bad. I have several friends who are trans now, quite a few. Dev is an estrogen, of course, as I keep telling everybody. But because this is not that. This is not a trans person going like, oh, hey, this is the thing. This is the flag of conquest. This is the political identity using that as a shield. This is why we're seeing the percentage of trans people in many countries rise astronomically, and we also see the case of misdiagnoses rise alongside it. There's nothing wrong with being trans. There is something wrong with using it as a weapon, however. And this all comes back to the roots of the ideology of repressive tolerance, of pushing the idea at any cost of intersectionality, where everything is literally codified as just another grievance to be used to find special powers for yourselves. And this is also why I think that the idea of bringing in, like you mentioned, Counterpoints, trans people to chase away Chad Hammer in 40k. This is a potential thing that a company might think, but I believe that the culture is changing so swiftly now that my primary concern isn't that. My primary concern is actually that our culture will change so quickly that we will come to the extreme opposite end, where we will have radicalized people against progressivism so hard that they will reach the point of disliking progressivism because it's progressivism and starting to dislike the identities that it has used instead. Meaning that instead
we're
of...
there.
We're not there yet. There is a minority.
We're not there in the real world.
Yes.
We're there on the internet.
Yes, there is a fringe minority that is already there. And I do believe that this radicalization could be a serious problem. Like, at the moment, we need to keep pulling right because the left is still in positions of institutional power, and they will not be dissuaded from these levers of power without a display of mass lack of appeal, shall we say. Yeah. But there is very much so the danger that we will hit that point, the tipping point, and then simply go swinging off to the other end. Like, I am fully prepared that within 10 years, probably less, I'm going to have to start talking about Christian nationalism again. And how that's not good in 40k either. It's like, no, you shouldn't put that in it either. I just want it to be 40k, God help me.
Yeah, no, this is correct from my perspective as well. So I identify as a centrist. I'm kind of... From an American standpoint, I'm probably center-left economically. When it comes to social issues, I'm probably center-right. And the reason being I care about keeping everything on balance is, you know, I'm former law enforcement, I'm former military, and I've been friends with and seen what happens when societies collapse in on themselves because they don't trust each other, they don't like each other. There's political tribalism, there's ethnic tribalism, there's persecution of minorities to the point of violence, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, I know that there's a lot of people who are so frustrated with the domination of cultural progressivism that they just want to burn the whole thing down.
Yes.
But I don't think that that's the solution. I think we need our own thing. We can't go along with the flow of the cultural hegemony, but we also can't destroy everything that's around us, or else we'll be truly fucked.
We need 2000ism. Absolute 2000ism is what we need to arrive at. Because we actually had a point in our history not that long ago where we had a golden age where things were allowed to be. We had so many edgy things, so many edgy forms of entertainment. Everything was accepted. And even like progressivism in the case of gender identity was very simply put, what you do in your bedroom is none of my business. Just don't preach it to me. That is the point I wish to return to, where, okay, you want to... see, this is the kind of thing that is making me warm to the Hell of a Boss series, because it's filled with degeneracy in many ways. Everybody's having gay bondage sex, but everyone is doing it in a very conservative way. Like, everything is in a monogamous relationship. Everybody's doing it because they love each other. At that point, I don't care if you want to whip each other. That's fine.
Well, yeah, so that's the trick, isn't it? And that's where I kind of invite, you know, other people who maybe disagree with our centrist, you know, philosophically liberal perspectives on how people interact with each other. But there are cool people out there. Like so, for instance, Taftaj, I consider an internet friend, Taftaj. She's a trans gal, but you would basically never know it. She passes. She's really cool. She's really smart. She likes reading. She's actually into dissident right-wing philosophy. She's fucking cool as shit. There's you know, I have black friends, Hispanic friends, Asian friends, whatever, and I'm not going to give you all their Twitter handles, but the truth is that, like, I would want us to come together for a shared goal. I know that you guys are in Europe, but I would like the Americas, like South Central and the United States of America, I would like those to be an economically prosperous, secure, stable part of the world, and then I would want that to spread to Eurasia, and then again 1,000 years from now I would want humanity to spread to the stars. And the truth is that if we're like measuring each other's skull shapes and throwing gay people off of rooftops, we're never going to get there.
Yes.
Yeah, that is true, but the problem is that even the opposite is happening. The picture Arch shared on the stream was from an artist that I have had more than encounter with. The trans line of models is of a French artist called Cerberus XT. That is a friend and another Warhammer with Bitshammer and Gamers on Games that are some of the most spineless cowards I've ever had the displeasure to propose a debate with. They all pulled out, as Templin Institute did, and none of them ever came back to me to have a serious discussion. Some of them actually critiqued me for wanting to have a debate live with them. But the main point I'm trying to make is that I don't know if you guys know what Cerberus managed to do in one of the biggest painting groups on Facebook called Aviar Metal.
I am not aware of that. I am mildly aware of Cerberus, mostly because I noticed that he talks about me a lot, but he never like quotes or mentions me. He screens caps my stuff, and I'm like, dude.
He talks about me like that a lot too. Yeah.
No, and didn't Cerberus do the female Space Marines where they're like, yeah, this is what we're talking about, and it was like a female with butcher's nails with huge fucking tits and her shit, and like I don't know if that was Cerberus. I'm pretty sure it was. But basically, like the point being that like, yeah, there's a certain element of this that is just like people want muscly, sexy women. There's a part of this that is just pornographic, and I wish they would acknowledge that.
Yeah, but that is not the point I'm trying to make. Like, everybody can have their own fetishes as long as they don't try to spread them to 40k, even if by standards of 40k, even the most disgusting things we can think that are not chaos are probably happening because it is 40k. But the main problem with the trans line of model called the Gate Crusher, for those who don't know it, so it is open war with them, is that Cerberus pretty much went into Aviar Metal, that is a group for painting where people show off painting of 100,000 people, so it is not a small group, started posting his stuff and started slowly taking control over the admins. It started from, oh yeah, there were people that were actually transphobic in the comments, were insulting him, were insulting the models or directly trans people, and those, all right, you can ban those because they are being assholes. It is in the rules to not be assholes. But from there, he started pretty much crying wolf every time. Now you can't critique his painting, critique his ideology, critique the motives that he is using to paint these models. You can't even critique his technique. You can say he's bad at painting. You cannot even laugh react his own posts without the admins coming and banning you. It is actually a thing I made a post about in my own group about how he used the transgender ideology just as a shield to take control of Aviar Metal. Now, if he makes a post and you do something that he doesn't like, it doesn't even have to be a comment but a reaction, you will be banned because he is using the trans ideology as a shield to take control of stuff and subvert the hobby. Now that group is a fucking cesspool of people getting banned for dumb reasons because somebody actually took power in it with an ideology that if you critique, you are transphobic. I am LGBT. I am LGBT. Fuck ideology in my game. Fuck trans painted models. Not because I hate trans people or I hate the trans ideology, but because it is not fitting to 40k. You paint them for yourself, all right, but it doesn't make you superior. It doesn't make me pretty much blocked from critiquing them.
Yeah, shouldn't they be Mechanicus anyways?
I mean, he made even a Death Guard Plague Marine, and then recently even made a trans flag painted Krieg soldier. So
yes,
it is a bit in bad taste.
This is absolutely the power play where you go like, okay, this is my thing. This is a good thing, right? And people go like, yeah, sure, okay. Yeah, but it's a good thing, yeah. Okay, but that person is mean to it. Okay, fine, we'll ban him. And then it continues. It's the narrow wedge. And this is absolutely a tactic that they use, and they've used again and again and again and again in every stage of being. Like, this is the thing. I don't even necessarily think that the Cerberus guy is actively malicious necessarily. He does sound like a fucking asshole, but this is ideological programming. This is all built into the ideology. And counterpoint, you said you studied like the communists of Italy, etc., right? You will recognize
Gramsci. This is my history, yes.
Yes, Gramsci. Like, this is all an ideological ploy. This is, again, why I am of the opinion that we need to make people look at the trans flag and go, oh, you're painting them in the Nazi flag, I see. Because we need to identify the ideology rather than the shield they hide behind.
Yeah, if one of you guys wants to do it, that's totally cool. But do you mind if I rant about kind of like a really simple summary of like Gramsci to Marcuse to modern progressivism?
If you manage to make a simple summary of that, I will applaud you, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll try to be as brief as humanly possible. So, Gramsci was early 20th century, if I remember correct, and he was a socialist. And he looked out at the world and he saw that the socialist revolutions that were occurring in the early 20th century were happening in agrarian feudal societies, and they weren't happening in developed societies. Whereas like Marx's predictions were that they were going to happen in developed societies. So he looked at that and he was like, well, what's going wrong? And what he realized, as far as I can tell, is that the institutional power of culture and government and capitalist economics came together to push culturally back against socialism. So as a result, there was kind of like an antibody response to socialism. So what I believe he said is that, hey, if we want to see socialist nations come out of developed countries, it's not good enough to make simple economic arguments of distribution. We also have to capture culture. And so we need to make left-wing egalitarian, socialist, and communist arguments in the cultural sphere in order to gain the power of government, military, culture, etc., to make our ideas acceptable enough that we will no longer be denied by developed society. And so I think that Marcuse, if I remember correct, he was like a German socialist guy who studied Gramsci and also I think was brought up in one of the philosopher areas of Germany. But then Marcuse, if I remember correct again, went to California, was wildly popular during the 60s and 70s as a socialist philosopher, raised an entire generation of American leftists, and basically made the same arguments that it's culture that needs to be captured before socialism can spread in the Western world. And then his ideological offspring are the people who created intersectionality, critical theory when it applies to justice, and I'm trying to think of one other one, but there was like one other like thing that we taught. Oh, diversity, equity, and inclusion. These are all offshoots of people who studied and liked Marcuse. So, and he was around in the 70s. This was to the point that I'm pretty sure President Reagan, like, he rejected his visa to the point that he was forced to go back to Germany and was no longer allowed in the United States. Then now we're in like the 90s and the thousands. Apparently there was like a whole like PC push that I missed in the 90s because I was too young. But the 1990s PC push and the 2010s and 20s PC push are viewed as this like cyclical attempt by leftists to capture media and culture in order to push right-wingers out.
Yes, because this is Herbert Marcuse's largest contribution to all of this is the idea of repressive tolerance, which is specifically the idea, quite easily summarized, to extend endless tolerance to their own side whilst withholding to the opposite side, which is a very effective strategy, and it worked so well because none of us had any fucking idea this was happening. It has taken us
and you get gaslit about it too.
Yes.
Oh, you get gaslit about it. Literally, you'll start an argument with a left-winger about Marcuse and Gramsci and intersectionality and diversity, equity, and inclusion and all that kind of stuff. And you'll start talking to them and they'll be like, that's not happening, that's not happening, that's not happening. And then by the time that you're like, no, here's the philosophers who talk to the philosophers who talk to these people who had this impact on this field of study, who created this, school of thought, et cetera, et cetera. By the time you've outlined the exact like academic through line, they say, well, aren't those ideas good anyways? Why are you fighting those ideas? So it's basically it's an argumentative Mott and Bailey where they start out with it's not happening and then they end with it's good, it's happening, and you should shut up about it.
Yeah, usually it is why it goes in the beginning. It always follows a pattern with this kind of things, and people
Yes.
can notice it all the time. At first, it goes, you notice it, but when you ask people, no, it's not happening. After a bit of time, after more people start noticing that something is happening, no, it is not happening, but if it happened, would be good. After even more people noticed, and there is no way to hide it anymore, it is, okay, it is happening, and it is why it is a good thing. It is
Yes.
always like this.
And this entire ideology is actually fucking brilliant. Because one of the things also is that Antonio Gramsci, the father of all of this, was an absolute luminescent genius. Like, he was clever as fuck. Because this entire ideology creates not followers, but robots. They are inundated with all of the data points they require without having any fucking idea what the ideology is. It's genius.
This is a Jordan Peterson quote that I think is really relevant. He basically talks about how when you bump into human beings, very often you are not dealing with the totality of an ideology manifested in its purest form. What you're dealing with is fractions of that ideology. So a lot of leftists, they've never read Gramsci, they've never read Marcuse, they've never read the person who did critical theory, I forget their name, but they've never
Kimberly
read
Crenshaw.
these people. Kimberly Crenshaw. They never read any of these people, and to be honest, neither have I. But through just like cultural exposure, they just absorb tiny pieces of it, and then they replicate it and spit it back out to you. And in some ways, all human beings are a manifestation of this process. But what's particularly nefarious about this process when it comes to Gramsci and cultural capture and all that kind of stuff is exactly what what we were talking about, where lefties will start with it's not happening and then it's good it's happening. I swear to God, 80% of the time, they don't even know that they made that argumentative movement. They do so instinctively.
Yes.
And then 20% of the time, they're actually like theory nerds who understand what's going on and they're just lying. So literally like 3/4 to 80% of these people are going through this process subconsciously.
Yes.
It is why their
brilliant.
ideology crumbles at the moment you try to actually put it on screening. If I can ask you a question about your ideology and your entire ideology fails to answer that question, it means that it is not a good ideology to begin with. Like the question I found for 40K for people that try to insert female space marines is a very simple one. Without using the word politics or inclusion, explain to me how adding female space marines contributes to the story of Warhammer 40K.
Yeah, that's
if you can answer that,
Sorry, go ahead.
If you can answer that without using the word politics or the word inclusivity, then maybe we can get discussing to a point. If you don't get an answer to that specific question, what they add to the story of 40K, then your entire ideology has failed you. Because at that point, you cannot answer even the basic question on why you want them in that is not connected to the real world. You are not a true fan at that point. And just to add to this entire kind of ideology, they don't realize that by going my way or the highway, you either are a good person or a Nazi, or you either agree with me or you are a bad person. They are making, they pretty much are becoming the Nazis themselves, because they're trying to subvert everything by making the side they don't like and they don't want around the bad guys. It is what the Nazis, the fascists, the communists do. Everything has to be done for the state. It has to advance the interest of the state. It has to advance the interest of the ideology of the state. If it doesn't, it must be subverted. It is what every single dictatorship did, does, and will always do. So they accuse us of being Nazi while pretty much taking tactics out of the Nazi guidebook.
Well, the well, the reason why I don't do that, because I actually try to communicate with leftists about their ideology and perspectives and all that kind of stuff, is for me, they will reject the Nazi label because authoritarians exist throughout the entirety of the political spectrum, but also because like Nazism to them is ethno-nationalist and therefore racist, and they're not racist, which is the biggest part of the problem with National Socialism, not the socialism part, not the economic redistributivism, not the decommodification of basic human needs or workers owning the means of production. And if you don't understand what I just said, that's totally fine. This is all Twitch politics fucking bullshit, right? But the point being with what I try to compare them to instead is Vanguard communists, basically Marxist-Leninists, and authoritarian communists like Stalin and Mao and Pol Pot and all that kind of stuff. Because then you're actually dealing with people, authoritarian monsters, who are ostensibly left. And so that, like, calling them authoritarian communists or Marxist-Leninists or vanguard communists, that's a harder charge for them to dodge, because there are people who are quote-unquote on their side who have done the horrible things that you're talking about.
I just refer to all of them as socialists.
I understand, but you might win over normies and people
Yes.
who aren't very political. But if you're well, and for me, I have a different game. I talk to Twitch. I could talk to Twitch and YouTube political nerds all day. For me, if I say that, I get dismissed.
Yes, see, that's the thing. My entire goal here is very simple, because all the politics is what Herbert Marcuse and everybody's doing. This is all a fight over the normies. We are 10% on each side, quarreling over the remaining 80% of sheep. Which is why the right is winning so quickly. Like, it has taken progressivism something like, 50, 60 years, damn near, to arrive at this point today, from the original ideas of Gramsci. It has taken us less than 20 years to turn this on its head again, primarily due to the usage of memes. Because the normies, they're not going to look at a left-wing meme, which is just a block of text, and like, I ain't reading that. But they're going to look at a chat going like, yes, all blacks are bad. Like, okay.
My favorite meme about left-wing memes is the Doge Christopher Columbus one that just goes, wish me good luck while I'm... No, it is the one that goes, wish me luck while I embark in a travel to read this wall of text.
Yep.
Yeah, well, in that it is true that right-wing ideas can be boiled down more simply, but like lefties will be like, oh, well, that's just because right-wingers are too stupid to understand concepts and ideas. And it's like, no, sometimes the truth is simple.
Yes.
So if you need a 10-page essay to explain to me why you're correct and you can't boil it down or any shape or fashion, you probably are wrong in some level of the concept.
Rather than wrong, I would say if you need 10 pages to explain it, you're probably obfuscating something. And probably from yourself.
Yeah, but most of the time they actually gaslight themselves into believing things that aren't true. Like, I was accused of being illiterate. The guy that learned English to learn 40k lore.
Rather than gaslight, like, this again, one of the brilliant parts about what Marcuse created here. Because whenever your ideology is being called out, the natural reaction of any human being is going, no, I'm not wrong. I just can't think of why this is right now.
Yeah. No, yeah, and that's the... Obviously, that's always frustrating to deal with conversationally. I'm going to try to have like more political conversations with political people about the concept, but then you kind of have to present them with an alternative. And I think what's frustrating for the dissident right and the far right is that they see the power of cultural progressivism, how it's infected so much of our society and institutions and culture and language and all that kind of stuff. They get frustrated. They want to burn it all down. So when you're like, hey, why don't we take a slightly more conservative version of liberalism and then institute that? They're like, that doesn't feel correct for how much shit has been fucked up.
Yes.
And then when you go to a leftist and you're like, hey, you're going fucking crazy and you're taking your identity and you're jamming it like a rag down everybody's throat. Can you chill the fuck out? And can you understand? This is like something that I try to tell, lefty minority people all the time is like, hey, you don't need people to like you. You just need people to respect you enough to let you live a normal life. And that's not good enough for them. Straight up. They don't want acceptance or tolerance. They want to be embraced. And the truth is that almost no one is totally embraced by all of society.
Yep. Like the revenge part is a very big part of this, definitely. And it's also that, unironically, the left has taught the right a lot of things over the last 10 years. A lot of things.
Be an absolute cunt and get your way? Yeah.
Yes.
It's horrible.
And I'm already seeing this from some right-wing commentators. Like, I think it was... I'm not going to call names right now because I can't remember the exact one. I think it was Matt Walsh, but And it was in relation to a Star Wars, because the new Star Wars movie is being helmed by a female director. And he dug up a quote where she said, "I want to make men uncomfortable." And immediately I'm like, yep, that sounds like current year. I'm going to retweet that. She's probably a bitch. And then I dug a little bit deeper, and she said this in reference to making a movie that calls out Pakistani honor killings. Like, you know what? I'm fine with making Pakistani men engaging in honor killings uncomfortable. You know, that's reasonable to me.
Yeah, that's okay.
And so
I'm vibing.
The right wing there has managed to take a quote 8 years out of context and has grievance archaeologized this shit and then presented it with no context. Because this is a tactic that the left showed us, and it works.
Yeah, that's the thing that I think does work on a short term. I think it's a good way to get popular. I think it's a good way to basically make money and cloud and influence and all that kind of stuff. I just don't think it's a good way to be a decent human being who can look yourself in the mirror. And so as an example, I'm just going to be a little bit rude and shitty just because it is what it is. But with Tim Pool in particular, I actually did some work for security for his crew when they went to Baltimore when they shot their most recent documentary stuff. And if him or Lauren Southern asked me to work with them again, I will. But I saw him take several stories where he took the facts of the narrative and presented it in such a way that it would be totally palatable to his audience. But he, through either self-delusion or malevolence, he just omitted every single thing that would have made the story more interesting, 2, more complex, 3, actually against his point. So that to me is it's a kind of like evil that is being fostered in our society, and we have to fight against that in order to at least be able to be true to ourselves and not be evil, corrupt cunts.
Mm-hmm. And Chap points out well that the woman has apparently been saying that in relevance to other things, that she's, it's time that Star Wars had a female director. It is entirely possible that she is completely ideologically possessed and the next Star Wars will be awful. But that is besides the point of somebody on our side did a bad. And we should be able to look at that as well and go, no, don't. That is the tool of the enemy. Please don't. And hell,
sure, or you can laugh about it and be like, hey, you're being a fucking piece of shit, and then point it out for everybody else to understand, and then that person loses a little bit of credibility as far as like an advocate for the movement. So you don't have to like totally shit on them to make them a pariah, but you can just jab them a little bit to try to change their behavior.
Yes.
Yeah, but the problem
even
is
I
that,
am a proponent for using the tools of the enemy. On occasion.
Yeah, but the problem is that we are the ones doing it. Like you're proposing that when one of our sides does something bad, we should be pushed to actually show it to everybody. And even if not just destroying their own career or lives, because that is the tool usually of extremists, actually show that somebody on our side did something bad. But now I ask the question, why should we do something like that when the side we're against, in this case leftists, woke and such, doesn't do the same? Why should we?
It's the power of tribalism. And the thing is, too, like, I'm not even arguing we should do it yet. Because for the war must be won first. And that is just the cold, hard pragmatism of it. It's the I will be an asshole to win for my side. And I hate the fact that this has happened to me. Because I used to be a very blue-eyed, naive little fuck when it came to all of this shit.
But yeah. So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go on. Like, because all of my point really is the political reality of the situation. Makes assholes out of us all. But go on.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is, I do spend most of my time punching left, and the reason why is because I think they're frustrating. I think they've infiltrated a lot of institutions. I think they hold way more cultural power than they're willing to speak about publicly. I think that they also do the gaslight thing, like we were talking about, where it's like, oh, that's not happening. Oh, it's good, it's happening. Like I bumped into that thousands of times. So until that is done, I'm going to punch left. But I have seen decently powerful people, like I would say Tim Pool is one of those people. I'll just use him as the example because I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but I do see Tim Pool like effectively capitalizing on the situation in a way that doesn't seem honest. And so if we shift in the direction that Arch was talking about, where people are unironically advocating for Christian theocracy in the Western world, they start advocating for like pogroms of not just Jews but Muslims in society, if they start saying that like we need racial segregation because human beings who are of different races are not capable of integrating together as
But the problem,
a people,
you know
then
what the problem is? The left,
I will
the
start
left
hitting
is
those
doing
people
that.
politically. Yeah,
Like
they're already doing it. Yeah,
the
they're already
left is
doing it a
doing that.
shitload.
Like they're the ones actually advocating for segregation again, because they're saying that white people are the enemy and they cannot live with black people. They are the one. They went so far left that we are back at segregation of races.
Yo, can this is one of the best things and worst things that's happened, right? So October 7th in Israel was one of the most like fucked up things that's happened since 9/11, just like massacring, like even if you go with the left-wing numbers, it was 300 Israeli soldiers and 900 Israeli civilians were killed that day. So that's like the skeptical numbers, right? So the Palestinians butcher 900 civilians, and you have leftists online cheering it on unironically. And since then, they've been spreading like such anti-Israel, anti-Jewish propaganda on the internet that if this was a rightoid 5 years ago, they would have been banned instantly.
Fuck
But
banned, they'd be
because
in jail.
I mean, dude, but because yeah, exactly. If they were in a European country that had hate speech laws, they would be in jail. If they were in Australia, they would be in jail. But because it's from the left, because it's from ostensibly progressives, oh, we have to hit this with like 10,000 levels of charitability and nuance.
I think the main problem when dealing with people for the left, and not only for gatekeeping or politics, but in general, is that while people on the right, at least in some cases, not all of them, because bad apples are everywhere, we are willing to compromise. Normal people are willing to compromise on things and have a discussion. From what I saw, hyper woke people, left or hyper leftist, or do you want to describe them, they don't have that capability. Like it is the reason there is a war in Warhammer 40k, an ideological one, but a war all the same for female space marines. Like like their side goes, oh yes, we need the female space marines for representation because you cannot have an all-male faction because it is sexist and such. Normal people at the beginning just went, yeah, but you have the sororitas, they're exclusively female, play them. What do you need female space marines? No, we need the female space marines because they are the poster boys, because they are the face of the hobby. We need them to show us representation. Then you don't give a single fuck about representation. You give a fuck about taking power. You want the poster boys to bend the knee to you. And other than that, we all know, even if nobody will ever admit it on their side, that this is another case of slippery slope. After they get female space marines, it won't stop there. The changes and the demands of them will keep coming because now they have taken place. They have put the foot in the door. From there on, they will ask for every kind of stupid fucking change until we reach D&D level of sanitized, where the real world of D&D now is shit because it is so sanitized, it doesn't need heroes. So at that point, what the fuck do you play D&D for if there is no bad guys to fight?
Yo, isn't that so fucking cringe? That is fucking cringe to me. It's like the orcs are representative of black people and blah 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 blah, and we can't do half races anymore because that's offensive to mixed race people. And it's like, oh, so what you're saying is you took a fantasy setting in which you are escaping in order to have simple villains, simple heroes, simple tropes, simple archetypes, but then also customize it to the 10,000th degree. So it's morally simple, but lore complex. And you've just made it lore simple and customization. You've made it lore simple and customization simple. You fucked up your product, you fucking idiot. And I really hope that is a cautionary example to people for the next decade. Absolutely.
They pretty much destroyed the entirety of their own product because at this point nobody likes the campaigns, and like there are people saying, yeah, the last good thing that came out of D&D in the last 3 years was Baldur's Gate 3, and even that game has the system of 5th edition that is probably the most disliked of them all because it is too simple and removes so much of the custom-made system that the old editions of D&D had. But the problem is that they kept sanitizing for people that in the end were the only ones seeing the problem. Normal players of D&D never had
Didn't give a fuck.
No, they didn't even have the idea in mind. Oh yes, the orcs are like are pretty much representatives of black people. Nobody on the fucking game had that idea in mind until a stupid socialist or whatever you want to call it, pretty much
Release that
activist.
stupid video on YouTube.
Yeah,
that
no,
was great.
came into the hobby, saw the hobby, and the first thing he thought, oh yeah, the
Service
orcs are
guarantees
black people.
citizenship.
Like
Yeah,
that doesn't that
goddamn.
doesn't make the players or the property racist. It makes him racist. It is very different because he's the one thinking about it.
The best
Well,
one
and
I've seen was on the old Sig Marketers board where they were discussing the problematic connections, and they were having an argument about which one was the Jews, Chaos Dwarves or Skaven. And there was like 30 posts of like, no, I think it's the Chaos Dwarves. No, I really think about the Skaven. And they were bringing up snippets of lore to justify their positions. Like, what the fuck are you discussing here?
But
one of them. No. This is a good story actually. I don't know if you guys saw the tweet of the guy that when the trailer for 10th edition with the
Service
Ultramarines
guarantees
fighting the
citizenship.
Tyranids dropped. Just went on Twitter. Just went on Twitter and said, "Oh yes, in this pretty much just to resume the entire tweet. It was, oh yes, the Tyranids are the Jews." And
yeah,
and I was like,
that was
what
amazing.
the fuck?
No, it was amazing. But yeah, and like that person got fucking quote tweeted out the ass. But here's the thing. So I think that it's okay to be introspective about the characters and the roles they play in the world. And I actually think that if you look at what humans aspire to, the narratives of not dwarves, well actually dwarves too, but dwarves, elves, humans and orcs are actually like, it's really interesting, but you should take it as an analysis of potential human behavior. Because elves, on one hand, they're elegant and they're graceful and they speak in a higher tongue and they're connected to nature and blah 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 blah. But the truth is that they have evolved to this higher idealism to the point that they're now bordering extinction because they don't even have the capacity to defend themselves anymore. Humans are torn between light and dark and all of the motivations that come along. They're probably the most complex, but that's because humanity is complex in the real world. And then dwarves are obviously obsessed with, gold and money and caves and exploration and all that kind of stuff, which can be adventurous and cool, but if taken to its extreme can lead to your corruption and death. And then orcs are obviously like our most animalistic impulses, our worst impulses, our desire to kill and rend and rip apart and be destructive and all that kind of shit, and to sulk in our own misery. And so when you take it from like a moral analysis instead of a racial analysis, it becomes really complex and interesting, and you can still be any of those characters and be cool. Like in Uruk-hai, the main Uruk-hai character from the movie, not even the books, he was fucking awesome, and he was a bad guy.
Yeah, they simply cannot see at anything deeper than really surface level. It is why pretty much the entirety of the woke movement cannot see themselves in anything if it isn't pretty much 100% identical to them. Like, I like Dante. Do you see me as a super soldier that is 8 feet tall, that uses bolt guns, and do you see me around with a chainsword? No, but I can still relate to him. Do you see me as Coriel Zet, a woman that is so heavily mechanicus enhanced that is pretty much more a robot by that point than anything, and
do you
detonated.
Yeah, do you see me as Princeps Zaha, the powerful soul who's capable of commanding an Imperial Emperor-class Titan during the Hive Hell's Reach siege? But because she's been strapped to the machine for so long, she is now a basically like no legs, no arms, stubby, mutated fucking monster of a human being, but she's still so pure of heart and so pure of will that she's capable of commanding one of the most powerful machines in the galaxy. It's like, no, but I love that character, and I would read a book just about that character and their exploits and the crew's exploits. But just because it's not a one-to-one representation, I can't love them as much. It's fucking bullshit. And by the way, sorry, real quick concession to the leftoids. If if Princess Zaha exists and like black characters exist and the salamanders, at least in the Hell's Reach TV series, they were Africanized. They weren't like the pure black skin Cole stereotype. Like, dude, if you got your representation and it's cool, shut the fuck up. What's the fucking problem?
Because they cannot concede anything that goes against their ideology.
Yeah, we have to have a trans disabled ultramarine who's a sergeant on the front line. That's what we need.
Yeah, but it is why everybody had problems with some of the recent changes that were given to some of the books. Like, I've seen people complain about the Black Ultramarine. I think it was on the Dawn of Fire book, one of the newest book where Gilliman was back. Everybody was complaining, but I was like, Ultramar is 500 world. I'm sure in some of them there is like black people because there is a population of black people. So it isn't really out of the realm of possibilities that a black guy could be an Ultramarines. The same cannot be said for Wolf Time, where in Wolf Time, the Space Wolves that can recruit only from Ferris because of their special genes, that can recruit only from their own population that is stable on a fucking ice world from 10,000 years, and you go on the cover and there is a person of color that is a Viking Space Wolf.
I saw that. That was so bad. That was so bad. And like, sorry for laughing. People might not know what we're talking about, but there was they weren't even Space Marines. They were like tribesmen or something like that. Which, like, you can almost headcanon it to be like, okay, well, they were space colonists and they arrived and then they became barbaric or whatever. But seriously, like, I don't think 10,000 years after colonization, you're going to remain as like a sub-Saharan African. I think you're probably going to evolve into something that is more Fenrisian, even after 10,000 years. And then what's funny there is I was like, well, taking what exists and then turning it West African is not diverse, right? So are we going to take this to the extreme? Are we going to have like blonde-haired, blue-eyed samurai from Chagoris? Are we going to have fucking like Asian dudes who are like, I don't know, they fight for like the Astral Lions or some shit like that, and it's an African thing, but they're Asian dudes who are running around and like, what's that, I forget that one tribe who had the canvas shields and the spears. The Zulu. Are we going to have Asian Zulu? Like, get the fuck out of here. Like, it's
no, and I can tell
ridiculous.
You why it will be avoided, because it goes against their own ideology. Their ideology of diversity is pretty much just changing white characters into black characters, or a straight character into gay characters. That is their definition of diversity. The only diversity they don't actually care about is diversity of thought, because that is pretty much toxic to their own fucking bubbles of reality, to their echo chambers. That is the only thing they don't care about, the diversity of ideology and thoughts. But the main problem with that is that Warhammer 40k has a balance. Every single faction, if they aren't asex like the orcs, has both males and females. The Imperium has male and female assassin, male and female guardsmen, male and female soldiers of various kind, male and female officers of the Navy, male and female inquisitors and such. There is only two factions that are really completely exclusive to one sex. The Space Marines that are exclusive to males, the Adeptus Sororitas that are exclusive to females. I see some people even bring in the Custodians, but the Custodians work with the Sisters of Silence, so they aren't really exclusive. There is female representation. So this representation is actually completely balanced. Bringing in female Space Marines unbalances the thing by leaving the Warrior Nuns of 40k, the Sisters of Battle, only female. But if you suggest, but then we would like to have male sororitas, then you're sexist because you want to intrude into female spaces.
Well, hold on. So here's an interesting thing that I really want to do. So I think I told you guys that I'm 3D printing a bolter. I know that the audience can't see it, but basically I bought a 12 gauge Rock Island VRF-14. It's a semi-automatic magazine-fed 12 gauge shotgun, and I took off the handguard that they already have, and I'm putting in furniture right now. After this, I'm going to work on a chainsword. But after that, I'm trying to talk with a guy right now who's really good at doing vehicle designs. But the only complaint about Sisters of Battle that I kind of see as valid is that they only have the nuns with guns aesthetic. They only have booby armor, not tactical armor. And that because, let's face it, a lot of trans women and women are more lefty sympathetic, they want the flavor of military, not just nuns with guns. So there's a fantastic artist on Twitter called Graffiti Soul. I think it's at the Graffiti Soul. And they did tactical nuns with guns. So they don't have booby plate, they have like tactical plate, they have like more tactical shoulder pauldrons, they have more tactical weapons, they have more tactical this, more tactical that. I literally want to do a tactical Sisters of Battle line, you know, for 3D printing resin models, and then say, hey, you wanted female Space Marines. These are a little upscaled. They're more tactical, and then headcanon it and say that, you know, these Sisters of Battle during the Great Rift, they got separated from the church. As a result, they started crusading with a bunch of Space Marines. They became more crusady and militaristic than they were religious devotees. As a result, they started adopting, you know, this warrior culture based off of the planet that they have their new thing off of. And then boom, you have a lore reason that's kind of justifiable to make tactical sisters, and you don't have to fucking bitch anymore. They're still going to bitch anyways, but I want to take that excuse away.
Like the ones I sent into the link chat, because there is in production actually from us, and it is a line of more tactically inclined female warriors of that kind. It is just still in pre-production, but we have still something.
Fuck yeah. And that's what I'm saying is like the community should come together. Like I love bitching on the internet as much as everybody else. But GW is on the sidelines. They're going to produce exactly as much as they need to in order to make money and capitalize off of all of our interest in their IP. So I don't expect them to take a leadership position. But people like Arch, people like yourself, hopefully people like me, we can start doing cool things. Like it's a brand new world. There's resin printers, there's 3D printers. The lore is as big or as shallow as you make it. So there's a lot of opportunity for creativity, and I think we need to start thinking that way. So if you're already doing tactical female guard or tactical female sisters, that's a huge step in the right direction.
Yeah, we are making it because we like to make a lot of things that are out of the norm, at least for space battles of this kind. But I think the main problem that people avoid when talking about the Imperium, when talking about progress and such, and it is a thing that I really have seen that seems the woke really cannot grasp about Warhammer 40k, is that the Imperium itself has its own culture, it has its own belief, it has its own ways of doing things. Like I have seen people just go, yes, but the Imperium could be more progressive, and I was like, do you even know what the fuck the Imperium is? The Imperium is a theological dictatorship, conservative to the point that even suggesting of straying away from anything they know, from any tradition they have, will just result with you getting executed on the spot.
Yeah, when the updating your toaster. Yeah, updating your toaster machine can get you killed.
Like when the when the Primaris Space Marines were announced, and they were just a big cop out. Like I will need to make a video about that, because there was already a superior version of Space Marines before the Primaris, but they were ignored. And that's a lot of wasted potential. But the main problem is they really don't grasp that the Imperium simply doesn't go along with change. It doesn't want change. Change is problematic for the Imperium. It is why the Primaris Space Marines in general are a problem. If there wasn't Gilliman behind them saying to the Imperium,
Call is obviously a tech heretic. Absolutely.
Yeah, if there wasn't Gilliman saying accept them because we are in deep shit, and if we don't get these soldiers fighting soon, we will lose and the Imperium will fall. The Imperium would have been in a second fucking Horus Heresy by the time they were discovered. And even now, the Black Templars send Primaris to die on the front lines just because they don't like them. They see them as mutants. The Dark Angels don't trust them. They kill them if they even learn about the Fallen, or even if they suspect they have learned about the Fallen. Some other chapters attack them on sight. Like, the Imperium is not adept to change. You cannot just go, yes, we can change this.
But do you know who would be perfect, though? You know who would be perfect for genetically enhanced female warriors? The New Men. The New Men from not Belisarius Call. Come on. Fabius Bile. Thank you. Yeah. So the New Men would be a cool like trader force. Like that would be awesome. And also like you could say like I think Slanesh and I think Slanesh would do female Space Marines as a fucking shitpost. I think they would absolutely do that. Or Zinch, you know, they would do that as a shitpost. So saying that like, you know, we have the female Adeptus Sororitas, you know, we gave them a few enhancements. Here's the more tactical versions of it or whatever. Make up your headcanon for why you're painting them a certain way that makes them more tactical. Boom, we handle the Imperial side. And then if you said instead, hey, you know, Slanesh is a degenerate who likes sex, so she restored, I think she already restores the sexual interest of male Space Marines, because they talk about grape all the time. So you know, we restored their sexuality, and then we also created like female Space Marines that are all corrupted and evil and all that kind of bullshit. I'm okay with that. But for the Imperium, it doesn't make sense. For Slanesh, it does.
But the problem is removing that they will never accept that the bad guys are the ones representing them because they want to be always the heroes of every single story. So yeah, we give you female Space Marines. They're from Slanesh, and you see an uproar of people just bringing down like entire Games Workshop shops for that.
It
like,
would just be a lot of accusations of GW being sexist and evil, etc.
Yeah, the new men also already have females, but they aren't Marines. They are like a superior version of human because they are even called in Latin Homus Novus. They are another version of humanity that Fabius Bile believes can surpass humanity, but they aren't even close to how powerful a Space Marine is. But Fabius Bile even disdains Space Marines because he considers them a biological dead end. But removing even this concept, the main problem with this kind of representation is that they always want to be on the right side of the story, even if by demanding to be included in the Imperium of Men, they are still demanding to be included in the worst kind of dictatorial dystopian world imaginable, where they will be the fascists again.
Yeah, that's a weird irony for me as well, is that like you want to be a part of the authoritarian, theocratic, collapsing, pseudo-fascistic empire, and you want to make them more progressive. That doesn't make sense. Shut the fuck up. Play Tau. Shut up and play Tau. But actually, I'm getting flagged down by the wife for dinner. It is a little bit earlier for me than it is for you guys. How long do you normally run for?
I imagine we can get started on the super chats now, and you'll stay for as long as you can. And then if you need to go to dinner, you'll just let us know. Because we've already been going for like 2 hours, so.
Yeah, if I could do 10 minutes of super chats and then dip out, that would be fantastic.
All right. Logan says simply glorious. It is indeed. Imperator 93.
Thanks, Logan.
Do you have any hope for Space Marine 2? Hopefully it does not suck Slanesh Peen. I do in theory. I was very worried about the obviously political person being like, I'm the head writer, and then they were like, oh, actually, I'm not the head writer. It's like, okay. But were you brought into the office and told to shut up or something?
No, I'm incredibly hopeful, just sharing my opinion. The head development director during their little 3-minute trailer, he was talking about how intimidating it was to be bringing this IP to life because of how rabid the fans are. I think that's an appropriate amount of fear. Also, I would play literally a reskinned Space Marine from 2012. If they reskinned it with Tyranids, I would play that and have a good time. So literally, as long as they get the game mechanics down, I think everything else will fall into place.
Yep. I'd be happy to see that too. Little bit worried still, but I hope it's good.
I hope it is not really. It doesn't really have to be good, seeing how bad some of the games recently of Games Workshop have been. I would even take neutral. At least don't go Dawn of War 3 level of shit.
Space Citizen says, progressivism destroys definitions in favor of equality. If everything is equal with no definition, you can't make anything because you have no building blocks.
I have lost.
Yes.
Yo, quick rant. I got really frustrated with Vosh when I know not all of you guys are familiar with Twitch and YouTube politics.
That's the one that likes horse penis. I've been told about him.
Yes, he likes horse penis.
I know he's the socialist that wants to lower the age of consent to like 14 or 12 in some cases.
But
and likes horse penis too. So
Well, in his defense, I think sometimes he imagines he's the horse, and then also the child diddling things was an analogy for capitalism or whatever the fuck the steel man of his argument is. But anyways, he was effectively saying, like, during a debate, we were talking about like the United States Constitution, and he's like, well, you know, words are just like words, man. They can mean like anything. So really, you could read into the Constitution whatever you wanted. And I'm like, no, you fucking can't. Like, you can't read cruel and unusual punishment and then just do whatever the fuck you want to human beings. Obviously, there's going to be necessary limits. Now, can you waterboard people? We argued that unsuccessfully and did it for 5 years. And we did that because we claimed that the people we were waterboarding were not citizens and that waterboarding didn't have any like long-term effects. Therefore, it wasn't cruel and unusual. But that got smacked down almost 4 years later. So obviously words have meaning, but if the super chatter is just making the point that lefties like to pretend nothing has meaning except for the meaning that they mean, you are absolutely correct, and it's one of the most frustrating rhetorical pieces of shit arguments lefties have.
Yes, it's a tool, it's a weapon, because they're correct, right? Because language is merely just a series of sounds that we have agreed upon the meaning of. If somebody then goes like, yeah, but I don't agree that word means that, the entire conversation grinds to a halt immediately. And that is a very good way for them to basically exhaust their opponents, or even just to get them go like, okay, fine, your fucking definition, just move on.
Yep.
Usually because they get they try to bunker down on their own dumb shit definitions of it. Like even the guy that I got on a podcast last time with was a very political leftist with a degree in philosophy. So you can imagine the kind of arguments I had to bear through that I wanted to smack my face to the wall. But the main problem was that, and that made me go, okay, you are completely unreasonable to talk with, is that he said that there was no concrete proof of a connection between the Molney controversy of Bud Light and Bud Light losing $4 billion for a boycott. Like it was like,
Yes,
there is no connection between that. And I was like, okay, then we cannot agree even on how reality works, because you're saying something that it is like saying I'm pointing a gun at somebody, I shoot him, yeah, but the bullet is what killed him, not me. What the fuck?
Yo, sorry, I'm sorry for tangenting one more time, but I had a lefty insistently argue with me that gene seed did not affect the genes of the host. And then they started citing to me that the gene seed was viral machines that were implanted through a slow process into the aspirant. And so as a result, if you removed all the gene seed, the human being would just go back to being a normal human. Viral machines is how we are anticipating doing CRISPR by using RNA. If I remember correctly, you know, I'm sure it's more complex than I'm describing, but by using RNA sequences to infiltrate genetics and then modify them from the inside. So we're literally talking about gene editing in the current timeline and 30,000 years from now. And he told me gene seed has nothing to do with genetics. I wanted to fucking kill myself. It was crazy.
Listen, the fact that only males can take it is exactly in the name. It is called gene seed. So from that, we can take that it is stored in the balls. So only men can be specimens.
Gene seed is stored in the balls. Yes. Nice.
That would also make an apothecary belt with gene seed on it a cum box, but that is an argument for another day.
You know what? Sorry, Arch. I know I'm interrupting the super chat, but I'm gonna make like I'm making stickers and magnets on the back end. I'm gonna do like the apothecary symbol, and then the tag around the sticker will be gene seed is stored in the balls.
Telkri says, I want to give a thanks and the Halberd of the Gate Kwap Kali award to those 5 men, Arch included, on the stream for their effort. Thank you very much. Now give me an actual halberd. I don't have one in my collection yet.
Excellent.
I want an AA-12 full auto shotgun. Do you have those?
No, I mean, no way. We're not legally allowed to own anything that makes noise.
Fuck.
Yeah, so basically, I know that the people who are Arch and my Italian friend here are both in Euroland. But for the Americans, my job or my goal is to continue the development of this product for maybe another like 30 to 45 days until I perfect the fit. But then the shotgun itself is $600. The print is probably like 50 to $100 or something like that. I would be hoping to sell these sometime in the next year, like actually get a gun license for selling them, and then be able to sell bolters that work with furniture that doesn't break when you fire it. So check back on me in a year and I'll sell you some weapons.
I mean, technically, you can sell the STL of the modifying part as long as they don't amount in their entirety to a full working weapon. You can simply sell them normally.
Yeah, absolutely, but the assembly process is not terribly complex. So I will sell the STL and I'll sell the instructions on how to assemble and disassemble and all that kind of stuff. But obviously the dude, if I could YouTube, paint Warhammer, talk about Warhammer, debate online politics, and make chainsaw swords and bolters for people, I think I would have died and gone to heaven.
I mean, we made. I'm going to send it in the link channel. We made probably one of the most heretical levels of resin soldier you can imagine. I sent it in the link channel. Let's see if you guys recognize it.
A very Gundam Tau Space Marine.
Is it guest chat or is it in the chat? Because I'm in the stream room and it's not showing
the
me
link
anything.
channel. The link
Service
channel.
guarantees citizenship.
Here on the Discord.
Oh, there you go. You guys have been posting all sorts of crazy shit, and I haven't even been able to see it. Oh, dude, that's heretical as a motherfucker.
The fact is that he doesn't have any right to be that good, even while being heretical.
Yes, that female armor is perfect.
It is more on the tactical side, less on the
Oh yeah,
side.
if you put a chest rig on that, there's no way that people could complain about that and be like, "Oh, you just want to see my tits and put me in high heels." It's like, "No, I want you to enjoy the game." So if making tactical sisters gets you to shut the fuck up about female space marines, I would be ecstatic.
Yeah, it is pretty much the point of that creation. But yeah, we can go on with the super chats if you want, so we don't have to keep our American friend here too much, so the dinner doesn't get cold.
Sure, 3 minutes.
Marked ashamed. Prediction: Biden administration will reroute migrants through New Mexico and Arizona and bust them to Texas. Federalize the National Guard. DOJ will arrest Governor Abbott for insurrection.
I have a more chill assessment, but yeah, it's obviously it's scary that effectively the Texan government is doing a protest against the unsustainable system we have at the border, and the response from Democrats is like, yeah, kill Republicans, carpet bomb them.
The Texan secession will continue
until morale improves.
Zero says, V and Dev sound rather odd today. Maybe just me. Yeah, only we've got an American and one with the strong accent, so I think we've got the boxes checked.
I mean, I am also Italian, so I think that counts as a disability. So we really tick every box.
Yes, and just like Romanians, you are brown in my book, so there you go.
It depends on from which hemisphere.
Swarthy Europeans.
Ministry of Wrongthink. There's no problem with girls climbing up into wooden treehouses to have fun with us, but if I can plainly see that they have a can of gasoline and a box of matches, they might get told to go away.
Sure. Literally yes, phenomenal analogy, agree completely.
Ciro, can our guests pour one out for Yarick off screen? Ah, yes, they not only did they kill Yarick, they killed him off fucking screen.
Yeah,
I'm sure we'll get it. Or I hope we get it eventually. I'll put it that way.
I am so sick of Games Workshop going like, okay, we did this. Like, when? Oh, we're gonna write that now, motherfuckers.
Honestly, it is a thing I hate the most because I want books about the Badab War and they aren't giving it out any.
Okay, but what I'm hoping is with Horus Heresy wrapping up, I know a healthy chunk of writers. Dan Abnett's pretty old right now, but I'm sure he still loves writing. I hope that they take the momentum they have from the Horus Heresy and move into the Scouring. Because if they literally if they just continued content for that entire 10,000 years while they continue to move the narrative forward incrementally, I think they would literally have like an IP that you can develop for the next century easily.
I
Yeah,
would like
probably.
books also on the Ragnar genocide, because
Yes.
it is heavily implied that a Primarch fell during the Emperor decided to kill him, but it was expunged because a Primarch died and a legion was completely annihilated during the genocide.
Yep. And then something for, I know you have 3D modelers in your community. Something that I want to do eventually is like Dark Age of Technology stuff as well. Because I think you could create factions like, the Van Sar, they have a complete STC. They have those like arachnid style helmets and those body glove style armor with like more advanced las guns and more advanced plasma weapons and all that kind of stuff. I think you could do like a Dark Age of Technology army and then either rule it as like Tau and like bring in like Titanfall, style robots and all that kind of stuff. So just because 40K is what it is right now doesn't mean that the lore or the love has to stop, even if it gets worse. But I'm 1 minute over time, so I'm gonna get out of here. But it was very fun. Arch, thank you. Pontius, thank you. And then basically, if you guys want to hang out in the future, I would be very much down to do this again.
Same thing,
All right.
brother.
Have a nice dinner.
All right, appreciate you, gentlemen. Bye.
Right.
We can go on for the super chats if you want.
Yep.
I still have
South
time.
Perspective says, "Are you planning to make another lore video series?" I started rewatching Rax. Hi from Argentina. Hello. Yes, the Sabbath Worlds Crusade is still in production. I've already got 3 videos recorded, actually. I'm just wrestling with how I'm going to get everything edited and in what way. Plus, I was originally thinking I wasn't going to do too much art for it, but the more I was working on it, I was like, yeah, no, I'm just going to do art. So I got started on the art very late. Wolfsbane says, "You forgot to say that Ripley lost her daughter." That was another thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, she lost her daughter, and this is why she got so attached to the kid in the second movie and fought so hard to protect her.
Alex Anderson just got seconds of unskippable ads. I'll have to watch the stream later. Kinda ruins the flow if I get 20 seconds of ads every 15 minutes. Well, blame YouTube. YouTube. Okay, so if you want to monetize your videos on streams now, you have to have on intermittent ads. And the most conservative you can do is every 30 minutes. Now, it is set up so that there shouldn't be unskippable ads, but it's YouTube, and YouTube just pretty much does whatever the fuck YouTube wants.
At this point, yeah, they have a monopoly on their own entertainment. So
Yes, since Twitch is 2 to 3 years away from going bankrupt properly, it's only going to get worse, gentlemen. You think 30 minutes is bad? Oh boy. Ghostman says, "Kiss the ring like the others, or be persecuted like Arch." Total bullshit. Also on my side, I would not want Jesus placed there without context. Yes. See, again, I am old enough to remember when the Christian conservatives were the censorious force. There is absolutely censorship on both sides, and I'm just holding on to this snowball's chance in hell that we can somehow halt this boulder in the middle. We'll see about that, I guess.
for now, we need to stop it from the left.
Yes.
But for the rest, yeah.
One problem at a time. Space Wolf Blackmane. "I got to read the Red Duke's novels, and I must say that it was absolutely perfect. I was so happy that we would get some new love, but man, I hate the Lady of the Lake being an elven goddess nonsense, and these new feminites also, as the intro back into the old world, are exactly what's coming for the rest." Yeah, I was not fond of the end times. The whole Lady of the Lake is just an elven princess now, because here's the thing too, it completely destroys Bretonia. Because the Grail Knights were supposed to be these great manifestations of Bretonian chivalry and noble might, right? Whereas now, all they are enslaved bodyguards to an elven princess who used them to keep her own realms safe. Like, oh, they're not heroes, they're bitches. Thank you.
I mean, the only
Workshop.
thing I'm familiar with the old world or Age of Sigmar is Jacob Bagmanson. So,
Bugmanson. 13x'd
Yeah.
out. JD's the new gold standard says, the gay guy turns to Nurgle. Interesting. Interesting indeed. Maybe there's a connection there somewhere.
It is very funny that even the undertone that is not wanted of that connection, especially with the Krieg.
Zero Firewater says, counterpoint to sound like the purple woman trying to see the ground his own kin. Well, we must have a little red bridge on as well. Dean Domino, $20. Thank you very much. I heard that the author of Handmaid's Tale got inspired by a Bible story of some guy who got caught up with a crazy family and pimped out for mandrake root. She did the Simpsons meme, how can I make this about me? See, I tried to watch The Handmaid's Tale, and while sitting there, I was just like, this is just torture porn. Like, I don't know if I'm interested in just torture porn.
I mean, at that point, just read the comics of Crossed. It is literally just torture porn.
Mm-hmm. Florian Ice Shutten, Horse Heresy, one giant character assassination and celebration. Yeah, the Big E has not been treated well by the Horus Heresy.
Especially because for being the most powerful and most advanced of all humans, he was a fucking idiot for half of it.
I have lost.
Yep, and most of his achievements were attributed to nameless, faceless scientists, which we'd never heard of before, magically enough.
Lara Starte, yeah. Erda.
Adherent of Lady Columbia says, the problem is 1, tabletop companies are ego clashes on IP. Most are private, no public, like GW. 2, a new hobby needs to grow at a particular rate to profit. And 3, no IP survives long without company support. That is true too. One of the main reasons why we aren't seeing new companies like we used to in the past is very much so because the current companies are IP policing very hard. Which is, of course, ironic because Warhammer is just like 40k is basically just Warhammer Fantasy set in space. That was the original idea. And its aesthetics are very clearly inspired by other things, like space knights, like Knights in Space, for example, Gothic architecture, theology, etc.
I will ask Dune about their God Emperor, but I think it existed before theirs. So.
Yes, Dune, a big one. And just like these settings copied a ton, normally the normal progression would be that other settings would copy a little bit of 40k, add a little bit of their own. But in the current world, where you get sued for pauldrons, that's no longer an option.
Yeah, and Games Workshop even lost the battle to try and put a copyright on the name Space Marines. It is why the new Space Marines are called Primaris Marines, because those you can put a copyright on.
Yep.
Space Marines weren't invented by Games Workshop, and Games Workshop tried to patent them anyway. So.
Yep. Just like the Eldar are now the Eldari. Oh god, I hate that name.
Yeah.
Adherent of Shadowfox 2300. I don't know, seems a lot of these companies are following this stuff as a way to make sure you don't own anything of their IP, that you still have to pay for it, but you don't own anything. There is definitely an aspect of that as well, where they're basically using progressivism as a, hey, aren't we good guys? You can't attack us. And then they do really shitty stuff. Because the progressives don't care about the product, and so you can get away with shit that the fans wouldn't allow you to get away with. But as long as they've got their progressive creds, they can. Mr. Fancy says, the only way I can see female Space Marines fitting into 40k is if GW were to make them solely part of the Chaos faction. They could have them be a chapter from, say, the Emperor's Children, and their only purpose is to troll and mock the Imperium.
I think old Games Workshop would have done that, like they did with the vegans and such. That I don't remember the name of the short story, but there was like a spaceship full of simul vegans that were critiquing and insulting an Hive planet for destroying its own ecosystem, like every single fucking Hive planet does, except if it is in Ultramar. And pretty much what happened is that they got all eaten by Brainleaf. So
there you go. Rain Tenet says, this guy sounds like he's going to let the gates wide open and should be shut out too. Counterpoint is a pinch more liberal than I am, I will say that much. But I think he can be brought around on the correct path of extermination.
Yeah, but to be honest, in my case, I'm neither right or left. I'm just for open war for everything, so...
Mark James says, don't ask, don't tell, it was legalized gatekeeping. Pretty much, yes. No, unironically, it's like, okay, you want to be gay in the military? All right, cool. Just don't fucking talk about it. Ironically, that might be the rules we need to adopt. Others Fowl says, funny seeing so many people I know starting to come together. Buckymus. Back in the corner. Ultra-killerism. Notice me, Danny Senpai. Heresy Posting Squad is here. Saluting face, saluting face, saluting face.
Yeah, heresy posting is like a nation by this point. We're just missing our own anthem, and knowing my community, it will be the funny pizza music from Spider-Man 2. So...
Harmonic Drive says, Arch, how can I separate sin from sinner when the prog people can't separate being gay from gay politics they spout? They just get excluded and thrown out everywhere I raise this complaint. Well, it comes to the definition of sin for me, because again, I am quite liberal of this. I'm a 2000s liberal in this regard, where if you want to have the most violent, filthy, dirty gay sex with butter and anal plugs and everything, go ahead. Just long as I don't have to watch. That's my point. Like, if you want to do this even the female Space Marine thing. If you want to make an entire army of female Space Marines, go ahead. You bought the models. I don't care. Just don't push it on everybody else.
Yeah, because the problem is that they don't want to personalize their own experience in the hobby. They want to personalize the experience of everybody in the hobby. That is what we are against. It's not really, don't make your models offend me. It's just, don't touch even my lore, because the lore is of everybody. It's not only yours. Your models are only yours.
And the sin here isn't having violent gay butter sex. It's trying to make everybody else watch your violent gay butter sex. Harmonic Drive says, Arch, base shaman, let cut the shit. Space Marine represents brotherhood. Leftists hate brotherhood. That's the whole debate. Space Marines are representation for men. True.
They're representation for men, manly brotherhood, and especially masculinity. And they are all good things. There is no such thing as toxic masculinity. There is masculinity and not masculinity. If you behave like an abusive asshole, you are an abusive asshole. You are not being masculine. Masculine is a good thing.
That's true. Weird says, since an afterlife is a cornerstone of religion and chaos is a secret, what does the Imperium cult preach about an afterlife? They do talk about how there's a heaven at the Empress left hand, etc. So they do basically claim that there is a heaven, but, well, there probably isn't one.
Probably, yeah, unless we recount the story of like the Star Child. In the case of the Star Child, then we can get a realm that is like heaven, but I doubt anybody really reaches it if it is not the Legion of the Damned or a living saint. So.
Mm-hmm. Seren says, well done, Arch, for bringing Danny in. It's been a long time coming. Both of you care and it shows. Big up, Heresy Posting crew. Respect to the ArchCast. Thank you.
Anyway, for those that have Facebook, the Facebook group is linked in the description of the stream. So if you want to come, everybody is welcomed, as long as you don't want female Space Marines.
It is indeed linked. Alfred B228, why are there no transgender Space Marines? Their paint schemes made them stand out on the field of battle. It was a good day for snipers. That and the 41% casualty rate before they reached the enemy.
I think the main problem is that if we take it like as a serious question, is that Space Marines aren't really human, nor by definition, nor by mentality. They don't have a gender, and they are too far up to wonder or even care about this kind of problems. Like, if you guys have read Ulstrich or even saw the movie in the end, there is a part where Grimaldus just goes, humans, they are a mystery to me. To even think that an indoctrinated war machine made only for battle and war, that cares only about killing the enemies of the Imperium, no matter the odds, no matter the cost, and fighting until it dies on a battlefield, cares about what gender is today or what push is, penis that he might or might not have, because it is never explained if they are castrated in the real sense of it or just indoctrinated into not having any sexual drives. You're completely misunderstood what Space Marines are. They are human in a way, but they are not completely human to the level. Humans to them are a mystery after a while, because they at one point just simply forget to ever have been human. They remember being always a space marine. This is a case even in the Dante book, where one of their teachers, their art teacher, is a retired space marine that is more bionics than man. And he says, yeah, I don't remember ever being human. For all I remember, I was always a space marine.
Mm-hmm. Jonathan Smith says, socialism/progressivism use consequential ethics and promote stripping human rights. That's the ground you fight on. They stand for end justify the means, they're evil, and they take away rights. They lie and want your rights. They do. Marked ashamed, everything isn't political, everything is conflict. Yes, burn. Patrick Kennedy, the trolling and memes will continue until morale improves. We may hope.
Abandon reason, no only war.
True. Gabriel not here, just because this stream was so based. Thank you. Dean Domino 25. Remember what the original weaponized identity was: woman. Feminism and communism relationship is like, which came first, the chicken or the egg? There is a big part of that, and this was actually something that communism used against the West. They used feminism as a tool, and like, hey, look, we're so equal. Look at us, propaganda with women in it. And this was something that the West didn't have an argument against, because we also were all for equality, etc. So I'm like, okay, fine, do that. And this is just kind of the logical end point of that, where we've broken down so many identities that the West has finally gotten to the point where it's like, no, we're starting to see what you're doing here now. We don't care about being equal anymore. Equality was a mistake.
We were more equal before people started demanding for equality. To be
we
honest.
were, straight up. Like, we were far freer before we started talking about equality.
Yeah, even oh my god, what was the name of the actor? Give me a second. It was he was Morgan Freeman. That in an interview he said that he really didn't believe in like Black History Month and such. He didn't believe in all this kind of useless pandering to something that was so far back, and he just went to even the interviewer, because the interviewer was Jewish, and he asked, would you want a Jewish History Month? And the interviewer went, no, I don't think we need it. Well, I don't think we need Black History Month. Like, do you want to defeat racism? Yes, then stop talking about race.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
in general.
Very much so. I remember that one. Zero says, don't forget, salamanders were called racist because they were exposed to solar radiation. How did you keep getting away with this? Who knows?
Yeah, I remember your video on the article. The salamanders are racist because they have charcoal skin and red eyes.
Yep.
And they look like demons.
Because solar radiation. Yes, that is the dumbest thing I think I've ever heard. Soul on the Lich has been around for 12 months. Thank you very much. Dear person commies, you clowns owning the museum and replacing the Mona Lisa with your Echo Homo doesn't make you worthy of praise. That's true.
It is a bit like saying having the capability to speak doesn't make you intelligent. That is also true.
Weird says, has anyone done research on DW CEO and board? I heard that they were getting rid of Roundtree after all these years, which make me worried because he did a lot of good for Games Workshop, so I guess we'll see. Lord Metalman says, problem is that 99% of female Space Marine wanters are not legit fans, so they are someone seeking fast, easy clout by using it as a cause to fight on social media. Yes, it is a tool rather than an actual genuine desire.
Yeah, once they get it, they will just demand something else. They will always find a problem because it is the only thing they are good to do, finding something that is problematic for them and pointing it out. Not really even solving it, just pointing it out for everybody.
And Chip says, there are no Latinos in the 40k universe, and we aren't complaining about representation, mostly because we have the Catholic aesthetic for that. There you go.
There are no Latinos. Sorry, Pedro Cantor, Alessio Cortez, the entirety of the chapter of the Crimson Fists, they are all Latino-inspired.
You mean Latinx. Get it right.
Like even Alessio Cortez has probably even the best joke I've ever seen made in the middle of a battle for the life of an entire planet in 40k. I don't know if you, Arch, have ever read the book Rin's World, The Battle for Rin's World.
I have not.
There is in the end a part where Alessio Cortez, if I remember right, is like the captain of the second company of the Crimson Fists, loses a fight against an orc, and the orc goes off running to reach the chapter master that was working to get the communication tower of the spaceport to work to call for help for a wag that was attacking their own planet, Rin's World. 500 Marines died by accident in that war. That was a funny part. But and Alessio Cortez just arrives back running, kills the orc that almost killed him. He arrives without an arm because it was torn away by the orc with his power claw, and he was then thrown at Pedro Cantor, that is the chapter master of the Crimson Fists. And when Pedro Cantor noticed that Alessio lost an arm and is bleeding profusely, he just goes, yeah, you are heavily wounded. It is better if you sit this one out. And Alessio just goes, no, I'm fine. I can keep fighting. And at that point, Pedro says, brother, you have lost an arm. And Alessio just goes, no, I didn't lose it. It's there. And then just indicates the disemboweled arm in the angle of the room.
Yep, I know where it is. So on the Lich says, do people asking for female space marines realize that wanting women to make the ultimate sacrifice for the Emperor is insanely misogynistic? Yes, and they probably don't care.
Yeah, there was representation. Doesn't matter if it is literally in the Nazis. If the Nazis don't have women, it is a problem.
Yes.
Like, yeah.
Amish Paradise 428 says, will we be seeing more collaborative work in the future between Arch and Heresy Posting? Quite possibly. We'll see.
I will be pretty happy about it. I'm always happy to discuss 40k with fellow gatekeepers and fellow lore enthusiasts.
The Existential Nihilist says, I noticed that in anime they've been avoiding panty shots at all costs, even in ecchi shows that otherwise have fan service. It's not with something people would make fun of you for pointing out. Yes, they will go for the low-hanging fruit first, because it is the easiest one to go after. And then they'll simply work their way up from there, once they've gotten enough credentials, essentially, within the setting.
Yeah, and even recently it has been a problem with Gundam, with even the original creator of Gundam telling them, don't go the way the Western animation went. Pretty much the creator of Gundam went, don't go woke, because it will kill Gundam for Japan.
Yes, it will. It will, absolutely. JD is the new gold standard, says, the entire issue can be reduced down to friend good, enemy bad. That's how Prog views everything, hence they don't see any contradictions. True. Tribalism. Why Hayton says, I want to see a world where if people try and bring their politics to the table looks at them like a pack of hungry hyenas. Pretty much. We need to return to a pre-politics age. And no one becomes a member. Thank you very much, sir. And lastly, Sonic Nitro, forgot to mention last week, but congratulations on achieving your 100th podcast last Arch. Also, who will win the fight, Conrad Curse or Petorabo? Curse.
Yeah, I think Curse too. I think Curse was second only to Sanguinius on strength, but I think right behind Curse there is Perturabo. So he defeated Fulgrim and roided up Demon Engrin.
Yep, but Curse is just a badass.
Yeah, he stopped Corvus Corax. He almost killed Vulcan multiple times, and yeah, he almost killed Robute and the Lion in a battle 2 versus 1, and killed countless Marines to the point that the Lion just went, "Robute, can we nuclearize Ultramar?" And Robute went, "What the fuck did you just say to me?"
Yep, because it's a badass. All right, well, we are through the super chat, so we can wrap it up there. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching. Thank you for hanging out with me till the end here, Danny.
It was a lot of fun.
Hopefully, we'll see everyone again next week. Till then, have a good day, everyone.